hours of ITN The News with Richard Swallow.
Good morning, the headlines. The people prepared to say goodbye to their princess. Diana's body taken home to Kensington Palace. Queen tells nation that she too will cherish her memory. As dawn breaks, a vast crowd is already lining the route that will be taken this morning by Diana's funeral procession. From Kensington Palace to Westminster Abbey, tens of thousands are rising from their camp chairs and sleeping bags. Hundreds of thousands have set off from homes across the nation, so they too can participate in the national mourning. The police force are braced for the biggest influx of people ever seen in the capital. Overnight, Westminster Abbey and St James's Park were lit up by candlelight. Neil Connery reports.
The people came throughout the night, determined to say farewell to their princess. As the nation unites to remember Diana, Princess of Wales, many of the millions expected began arriving. Outside Westminster Abbey and along the route of this morning's procession, they spent a cold night sleeping on pavements. All were united in their grief.
We've only met each other a few hours ago, and we've bonded in a way that if we met each other normally across the street, we wouldn't even say hello to each other. It's just like...
It's drawing everyone together.
It's drawing everyone together.
We all feel we're sharing something really important, and it's been very calm and peaceful.
Special trains arrived in London in the early hours, bringing mourners from across the country.
I think she's going to bring a lot of love together tonight, because everybody on that train was pulling together in friendship and love all around everywhere.
As the body of the princess lay inside Kensington Palace, in the grounds outside, they arrived with flowers and sat in silence. Along the funeral route throughout the night, people have been reflecting on their princess. She said she wanted to be a Queen of Hearts, and today her subjects in Britain and throughout the world will remember her just as that. By 4:30 this morning, Parliament Square and the area around the Abbey were already full. In their thousands, they've waited for many hours this week to sign books of condolences and leave flowers. In their millions, the princess's people now wait to mourn her on her final journey. Neil Connery, ITN, Westminster Abbey.
Hillary Clinton is on her way to represent President Clinton and the United States at the funeral. The US First Lady boarded an Air Force plane in Martha's Vineyard, where the Clintons have been spending a family vacation. After the service at the Abbey, she'll have lunch with the Prime Minister before flying home. Princess Diana's body rested last night at Kensington Palace, her old London home, where she'd spent many happy times with her two sons. The hearse, which escorted it from St James's Palace yesterday evening, was followed by Prince Charles and the young princes. Earlier, the Queen had paid a tribute to the princess. Speaking live on TV and radio, she called her an exceptional and gifted human being. James Mates reports.
The final journey home, not yet the final farewell. The body of a princess so loved by her people leaving the sanctuary of the Chapel Royal in St James's Palace, on its way to rest one last night in Kensington Palace. Behind a coffin shrouded in the royal standard and adorned by a spray of her favourite white lilies, drove her two sons, Princes William and Harry, bringing their mother back home. On either side, just some of the millions who mourn. So many people, so silent, so sad. The night sky was casting its own shroud as the cortege passed in front of Kensington Palace, almost disappearing amidst the tens of thousands. Many will still be here to see her leave for the last time. It was the end of a day in which the Queen had come back to London to lead the nation's thoughts in memory of the Princess, to articulate the grief of her family and of her people.
What I say to you now, as your Queen and as a grandmother, I say from my heart. First, I want to pay tribute to Diana myself. She was an exceptional and gifted human being. In good times and bad, she never lost her capacity to smile and laugh, nor to inspire others with her warmth and kindness. I admired and respected her for her energy and commitment to others, and especially for her devotion to her two boys. I, for one, believe there are lessons to be drawn from her life and from the extraordinary and moving reaction to her death. I share in your determination to cherish her memory. I hope that tomorrow we can all, wherever we are, join in expressing our grief at Diana's loss and gratitude for her all too short life. It is a chance to show to the whole world the British nation united in grief and respect.
And in that, her words relayed to the crowds outside truly struck a chord.
She sounded very sincere, and she looked as though she was very moved, and I think that will satisfy everyone.
I thought she said everything she should have said. Can't think of anything that she left out at all.
At Kensington Palace, on the uniquely sad day, the people who loved Diana are staging a final vigil.
On their return to London, the royal family immediately began to mix with members of the public, healing the wounds that some said had been caused by their staying in Balmoral. The Queen and Duke of Edinburgh walked among the crowds outside Buckingham Palace, while Prince Charles and the two young princes accepted flowers and exchanged words of sympathy with those standing outside Kensington Palace. Colin Baker reports.
This was the long-awaited coming together of sovereign and nation. Emerging from 6 days of intensely private mourning in Balmoral, the Queen with Prince Philip came home. Their thoughts on this journey will never be known. Surely they will also never be forgotten. For the Queen and Duke of Edinburgh, the first sight of their royal residence was a palace garlanded with 1,000,000 bouquets. And as they arrived, there was some applause, and it spread and it rippled through the thousands now gathered. But their attention was grabbed immediately by the flowers. There was a mountain at their gates. Whatever tears were shed in the crowds, this was a moment of comfort for the people. There was no haste, only time for a shared thought, a word of gratitude, and to take a bunch of flowers and place it gently with the rest. The people warmed to the presence of the Queen and the rest of the royal family back at Buckingham Palace, the focus of their grief. Then it was to St James's Palace, and the royal couple were the day's most unexpected arrivals for the crowds who'd been waiting 12 hours to sign the books of condolence. Waiting all day with a rose for a princess, this man queuing at St James's Palace gave it to the Queen. 3 princes and a mass of flowers, shouting with one voice the message from the nation, "You are not alone." From a place unknown to most, they brought with them to Kensington Palace the steel and the strength many others will require in the coming hours. A father and 2 sons, for a few moments, lost in thought in a sea of compassion. And a moment to reflect on a tribute to a mother.
Charles.
Shut up.
Charles.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
William. William.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, hold on.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
William, we love you.
Love you! Oh, God,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Single lilies each, to be laid with the rest. And as they made ready to go into the palace, empty but for memories, the one sure thought that courage, like the people, will not desert them. Colin Baker, ITN.
An estimated 1 million bunches of flowers have been laid by the public at royal palaces in London. Indeed, they become an abiding image of the week. This report is by Andrew Simmons.
A bright mass of flowers now dwarfing the hundreds of people at the edge of it, built up in 6 overwhelming days. It was here below, behind the gates of Kensington Palace, where Diana, Princess of Wales, used to live. Its approach roads are smothered by bouquets. In contrast to the carefully arranged carpet of flowers laid before Buckingham Palace. So many found it impossible to absorb from pictures and words what has been going on. And that is perhaps why such vast numbers of all ages and backgrounds have come to the royal palaces impulsively to be amongst the sweet scent of these flowers. Every bunch of them distinctive for its own individual message. And amongst the people, it is still hard to take in the enormity of it all. Outside the 3 royal palaces, more than 1 million bouquets have been laid. A Buckingham Palace spokesman says all of the flowers will remain in place over the weekend. After that, it's yet to be decided where they'll be taken to. But every single message will be collected and passed on.
From London, the funeral cortege will make its way up the M1 to Northamptonshire and Diana's final resting place. She was to have been buried in the Spencer family vault in the parish church at Great Brington, but now the princess will be laid to rest on an island in the grounds of her childhood home. Reporting from Althorpe, here's Eric McGuinness.
The gates of Althorpe, destination of so many mourners, and behind which we now know the princess will finally be laid to rest. It is here on this island, in the centre of the estate's ornamental lake, that Princess Diana's coffin will be brought. It is the family's wish that she be buried here, a place of serene beauty, where her relatives, in particular her 2 young sons, can come in privacy and pay their respects. While 20 generations have been buried in the village church, the decision is a break with Spencer tradition, a unique arrangement for Princess Diana.
I think it's the right decision for privacy for the princess.
I think that it's good. I think that they should be allowed some private time.
Roads are now closed, large crowds are expected. Some are already in place on the route leading up to the gates. And it is here her coffin will slip from public gaze forever. The people are still coming, and it is in anticipation of this public need that the family are considering erecting a memorial outside the gates, allowing people to come whenever they wish to pay their respects.
Among the millions lining her funeral route will be some whose lives have been touched by the princess personally. Caroline Kerr has talked to 3 such people to hear their stories.
Emma May is a 16-year-old who's just started studying for her A-levels. She'll be in the Mall. Chris Moon lost an arm and a leg, but he's training to run in a marathon. He'll be at the service inside the Abbey. Eileen Brennan is a ward sister looking after a little girl who's had a kidney transplant. She'll be part of the funeral procession. Diana touched all their lives. She met Eileen here on the left in February when she visited Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital.
For the children, it was like a magical day. They saw her as a princess and they were just excited about all the sparkle. when we were walking around introducing her to all the children, you sort of forgot that she was royal, and she was just like somebody very nice coming to see the children.
Eileen's used to tragedy, but she's unsure how she'll cope.
We're used to death and dying and coping with situations like this, but I think this will be unique. And having met Diana, I think it might be a little bit harder.
The Princess met Emma May 6 years ago when she was presenting children with an award for bravery. Emma was born with Turner's syndrome, a disease which stunted her growth. Diana told her to keep in touch, and she did. For the next 6 years, they wrote to each other regularly. When Emma needed £40,000 for an operation, Diana made a large personal contribution.
She was a friend in every sense of the word, really. I mean, not only did she send me money to help with my leg operation, but she kept in touch, monitoring my progress and giving me lots of support. I can't have children because of my Turner syndrome, and she said that she knew that that would become very difficult for me as I got older, and that she'd always be there to give me support when the time came. And unfortunately, now I'm not going to be able to do that.
He truly symbolises what selfless bravery is.
Chris Moon was applauded by Diana in March for his work as an anti-landmine campaigner. He lost 2 limbs clearing mines in Mozambique.
It'll be a very tragic day, but I think what's left is the future, and it's right to really make that in every way a fitting memorial, and to continue supporting the causes that she supported and just trying to make things a little better.
Through her life, Diana said she hoped she could make things a little better. Now it falls to those who received her help to continue her work.
Many newspapers have this morning brought out special memorial issues. The Times carries a picture of the princes and a sea of flowers leading a nation's grief. It describes the Queen's tribute to an exceptional and gifted human being. In the Telegraph, let us show the world we are united in grief. The paper reports how Britain and much of the globe will come to a tearful standstill this morning, pictured as the Queen and Prince William. A picture of Diana, Princess of Wales, and Prince Harry surrounded by floral tributes forms the centrepiece of The Guardian's front page. The paper describes how the nation waits for the funeral of the century. In The Independent, here for a Diana for history, and a report that the people are in London to say goodbye to the Princess and to be part of the historic event. In the Mirror, the similarity is striking, and the caption familiar. Prince of Hearts and a picture of Prince William at Kensington Palace, with flowers left for his mother. Finally, the Princess herself is pictured on the front pages of many of the tabloids, in the Mail, in the Sun, the Star, and in the Express. The simple message, we shall never forget you. Now, other news. President Clinton has led tributes from around the world for Mother Teresa, who died yesterday. He said she had faith, hope, and love in abundance. Mother Teresa, a Nobel Peace Prize winner, was seen by millions as a saint who devoted her life to the sick and poor of Calcutta. She was 87. Claire Cross reports.
Mother Teresa's body lying on a bed of ice with hands clasped in the simple habit worn by members of her order. The shock of Mother Teresa's death swept through people leaving Westminster Cathedral after a special service for the Princess of Wales.
She had this tremendous feeling for life, the value of life, and anything which destroyed life, whether it was in war or in abortion, was absolutely abhorrent to her.
President Clinton had this tribute.
With the power of her humble and unconquerable faith, she touched the lives of millions of people in India, here in the United States, and throughout the world. Like everyone who ever met her, I was profoundly moved by her conviction and her courage.
Her care for the poor and sick the world over earned her the love of millions. But it was in India, she said, more than 40 years ago, she heard the divine call. The Pope allowed her to leave her order and start a mission to teach slum children. Later came the Pure Heart Clinic. Mother Teresa and her helpers gathered the dying from the gutters of Calcutta to give them dignity in death. It was this work that in the eyes of the world made her a saint. On a visit to Britain, she was shocked by the number of people sleeping on the streets.
It was so painful to see, and they too are children of God.
But her work goes on. Sister Nirmala elected Mother Teresa's successor. Claire Cross, ITN.
Okay. In the wake of the triple suicide bombing and the death of 12 Marines, Israel's Prime Minister has said he no longer feels bound by peace accords with Palestinians and would not hand over large chunks of the West Bank as he'd pledged. Hugh Pym at ITN reports.
It was Israel's worst military setback in the Lebanon for 12 years, a second devastating blow in as many days after the bombing in Jerusalem. Their president visiting surviving soldiers rescued and taken to hospital in northern Israel.
Obviously, there are two hard hits that are different, completely different to each other. And one thing I said in Hebrew, and I say it in English again, that we have to brace ourselves.
This was where the Lebanese troops and Muslim guerrillas beat back the Israeli attack, the Marine commandos having launched a raid north of the city of Tyre. It was just outside a 9-mile deep security zone established by the Israelis, an area occupied with the aim of protecting northern Israel from guerrilla raids. The clash leaving 11 commandos dead and a 12th missing. The Prime Minister said he would retaliate, Benjamin Netanyahu announcing a freeze on land being handed to the Palestinians. He would not, he said, bow to terrorism.
We are absolutely committed to resist these terrorists, and we believe that with our resolve and our commitment, we will achieve the secure peace that our people deserve.
The peace process in the Middle East has been severely battered, a process which the American Secretary of State will try to salvage with her visit next week.
The wine has been flowing in Greece after Athens was awarded the 2004 Olympic Games. After the relative failure of the World Athletic Championships last month, the Greek capital was something of a surprise choice. Many had expected Rome to win. Our sports reporter Peter Staunton has the story.
The votes of the Olympic delegates had been counted. One of the 5 bidding cities had won the right to stage the biggest event in the sporting calendar.
The city will have the honor and responsibility to organize the Olympic Games of the year 2004 is Athens.
They'd beaten the favourites Rome. Thousands heard the announcement in the streets of the Greek capital. For the organisers, the end of a 4-year battle to win the Games and the start of 7 years' work to get everything ready.
I thank the IOC for the honor they gave us, and now we start working. We have to start working.
And there's much work to be done. Behind the glossy publicity images, Athens is a city with dangerous air pollution in the summer months. During the World Athletics Championships in August this year, a handful of competitors collapsed. There wasn't one world record broken, the 40-degree heat blamed for that. But a clean-up campaign is promised, and after last year's over-commercial Olympics in Atlanta, many are relieved the Games are finally going back to their birthplace.
Britain's Greg Ruzetsky may be forced to drop out of his semi-final in the US Tennis Open today. He's got the flu. He's due to play Jonas Bjorkman from Sweden after beating Krajcek in the quarter-final. He'll decide whether he's fit to play later this morning. You're watching the morning news from ITN on Saturday, the 6th of September. A recap of the main events. As dawn breaks, a vast crowd is already lining the route that'll be taken this morning by Diana's funeral procession. From Kensington Palace to Westminster Abbey, tens of thousands are rising from their camp chairs and sleeping bags. Hundreds of thousands have set off from homes across the nation, so they too can participate in the national mourning. Overnight, Westminster Abbey and St James's Park were lit up by candlelight. The police are braced for the biggest influx of people ever seen in the capital. Princess Diana's body rested last night at Kensington Palace, her old London home where she'd spent many happy times with her 2 sons. The hearse, which escorted it from St James's Palace yesterday evening, was followed by Prince Charles and the young princes. Thousands flocked to catch a glimpse, many throwing flowers, many in tears. Her coffin will leave Kensington Palace at 9:08 this morning. Draped in a royal standard and carried on a gun carriage, it'll take 1 hour and 47 minutes to make the journey to Westminster Abbey for the funeral service. And that's it from the ITN Morning News team. GMTV begins in a moment with reports on the morning's preparations. And here at ITN, we'll have uninterrupted coverage of the procession, the funeral, and Diana's final journey to her family home in Northamptonshire. That's from 8:30 this morning through to 4 o'clock this afternoon. But for now from us, goodbye.
Good morning. Welcome to this special programme on the day that the people of Britain bid their final farewell to Diana, Princess of Wales. Hundreds of thousands of people have spent the night camped out in London along the 2-mile route from Kensington Palace, where Diana's coffin has lain since yesterday evening, to Westminster Abbey, the setting for her funeral. Others are starting to line the roads and bridges on the 77-mile route to her burial place, the Spencer family home in Northamptonshire. All through the night, mourners have been streaming into London to be present at a gathering on a scale not seen since the end of the Second World War in 1945, and possibly never seen before. More than 1 million people are expected to crowd into the capital. Tens of millions more will be watching on television here, and billions around the world. On this sombre day, the BBC will be bringing you live coverage as events unfold in the capital and around the country, and a week of extraordinary drama reaches its conclusion. Diana's final journey begins at 9:08 when, with her coffin on a gun carriage, the funeral procession leaves Kensington Palace for Westminster Abbey. An hour and 18 minutes later, it reaches St James's Palace, where it's joined by more than 500 representatives of charities the Princess supported. Her brother, Earl Spencer, and his family arrive at the Abbey at 10:35, to be joined 15 minutes later by the Queen and senior royals. The funeral procession is due to arrive at 11:05. The service itself begins at 11 and ends 45 minutes later. From Westminster, Diana's coffin will be driven through North London to the M1 and on to her burial at Althorpe, a journey expected to take 4 or 5 hours. Mourners have camped out overnight along the whole of the route to secure the best vantage point to view the funeral procession. Many have kept up a candlelit vigil throughout the night. Police have urged the public to avoid the areas around Westminster Abbey and Parliament Square, which are already full. But despite the crowds, police say there has been no trouble, and the mourners were notable for their respectful calm.
Burning through the cold darkness of the night, hundreds of candles provide a focus for the mourners waiting outside Kensington Palace, waiting for the hour when the body of Diana, Princess of Wales, will leave her home for the last time. 2 priests have watched over the coffin throughout the night. The sea of flowers has continued to grow, and for the people gathered here there's been little sleep. Instead, there's been time to reflect on the impact of the Princess's death.
There's just like a stillness, it's so silent, and it makes you feel really strange. I've never felt like this. I never thought it would affect me in such a way.
It's really amazing how you just look around and you see people of different races and different ages, and different colours.
It's like trying to bridge this gap between everyone.
It's absolutely unbelievable what's shown by the people, and our hearts go out to the boys, and we hope someone puts their arms around them like their mum did.
On the roads leading to Westminster Abbey, people have been camping on the pavements to ensure their place along the route which the funeral procession will take. They've been warned to bring plenty of food, drink and warm clothing to see them through a long day. But most believe the discomfort is worth it.
It's very sad, very, very sad, and I'm just glad I came. I'd rather be here than anywhere else at the moment. This is the place I'd much rather be.
Others have found equally unusual places to spend the night. These people are making the most of the free accommodation offered on a train which is going nowhere. This particular train was named by Diana, Princess of Wales in 1988. It's called the Red Cross after one of her favourite charities. And staff here at Paddington Station felt rather than it sitting empty in a depot, it should be turned into a temporary hotel. The capital's stations will be key pressure points during the day. They are already busy with people arriving for the funeral, and the police estimate up to 6 million people will flood into London. The railway companies admit the scale of the demand has taken them by surprise.
We were astonished at the numbers because we know that our special trains were completely sold out. One train that frankly didn't actually exist 48 hours ago, we just put it into the timetable, it's completely sold out. We've laid on extra trains, we rearranged our timetable so the trains get into Paddington much earlier.
At the moment, many are still making their way to London. This special train left Plymouth in the early hours, picking up passengers en route. They're people who are determined to make the journey so they can pay their respects to the people's princess. Alison Holt, BBC News.
As people come into London this morning, the police say traffic so far has been quiet. In the last few minutes, the RAC say the roads are surprisingly clear. But the police have already closed dozens of roads around the funeral procession's route. Roads leading into Westminster and Whitehall had to be shut 3 hours earlier than expected because of the number of people camped there. Scotland Yard are now asking the public to avoid Parliament Square and Whitehall. They suggest that people go to other parts of the route. Motorways into the capital are also quiet at the moment. And for the latest on the travel situation, we go over to BBC Greater London Radio Studio at Scotland Yard. Sally Bozeman is our travel reporter. Sally, what's the position from your central vantage point?
Well, as you said, Martin, it's surprisingly clear at the moment. Most main routes coming into London are running really very well indeed. But obviously worth bearing in mind if you are planning to come into London via car, parking restrictions are very strictly enforced today. The police will have no hesitation in towing people away very quickly. So the best advice that we can give is to say, come as near to the capital as you can to where you can park legally, and from there get public transport into the centre. Now there are about 6 underground stations around the Westminster Abbey area that are very useful. You can go to Green Park, St James Park, Victoria, the Embankment, Hyde Park Corner or Charing Cross. All of those underground stations are within walking distance of the Abbey and very, very accessible. If you are coming into town and you want to use a car park, Battersea Park have allocated 2,000 spaces there to park and then to come in by public transport. And also out at Docklands Light Railway, the Royal Victoria Dock, they've allocated 1,000 spaces there on a sort of park and ride basis, again to access London. So those are the best advice I can give you, is to park, get on public transport, and that will be by far the easiest way to access central London.
Sally, is there any sense in which the police may have overestimated the number of people who are actually heading for central London, and that in fact the crowds may not be quite as big as expected?
Well, I think they, as we all, are sort of, it's all new territory for us. No one really is sure. There have been various estimates bandied about throughout the week, but it's very unknown territory. We will watch the situation very closely. It could be that later on this morning the traffic really starts to build up. But as I say, they are urging most people to come in where possible by public transport.
Sally, thank you very much indeed. And the build-up of mourners arriving in London by car, coach and train is well underway. Our correspondent George Eakin is at King's Cross Station. George, is the pattern the same on rail as we are seeing on the roads? Are there in fact not quite as many people arriving by train as had been expected?
Well, it's difficult to tell, Martin, because the main rush of arrivals by train will come slightly later, around 7:30, between 7:30 and 9, I would say. There have been special trains arriving here during the night at King's Cross from Peterborough, Cambridge, that sort of direction, and one special train from Leeds arrived at 3 o'clock in the morning, which was jammed, according to a spokesman here. Later on, a regular service from Leeds comes in, and then slightly later, around about sort of 8:45, we start seeing special trains arriving from the likes of Edinburgh, a train there which left at 4 in the morning, said to be very full. And in the meantime, trains coming in all the time, every 10 or 15 minutes, with extra stock added, so that although there aren't many extra services, the trains themselves can carry more passengers.
George, thank you very much. And after the funeral at Westminster, Diana's coffin will be taken through North London to join the M1 at Brent Cross. Our reporter Jane Peel is there. Jane, what's the position from your vantage point?
Well, this is normally one of the busier shopping areas in London on a Saturday, and all commercial activity will be coming to a close this morning in respect for Diana, Princess of Wales. Her coffin will come along these roads behind me, the A41, then the North Circular Road, passing out under the underpass towards junction 1 of the M1 and away, leaving London for the last time on her final journey to Althorpe. At the moment, traffic is indeed very light. The police say that it's normal for a Saturday morning. What they're concerned about really is not what's happening now, but what might happen on the M1 later on. They've got no idea how many people will turn out on the bridges or along the embankments to watch the cortege pass, or indeed what will happen to the traffic on the motorway coming southbound, and whether they'll stop against all advice. Here at Brent Cross, there are very few people around at the moment. I think what will happen is that people will gather on these bridges to watch the cortege later on, perhaps after watching the funeral service on the television. But there are many people from this area who've already been on their way to central London. I was staying at a hotel nearby, and at 5 o'clock this morning I met 2 young men from Arizona who were here for a basketball tournament this weekend, who said that they felt they just had to go into town to mark this historic and very sad event. And there are many people here who are doing that and who are planning to try to come out this way later on today to see the cortege on its final journey.
And Jane, do you think it's possible that so many people may have been put off by the reports of up to 6 million people heading for the centre of London, that some people have decided not to make the journey but stay home and watch it on television?
I think that's quite possible. We've been hearing all week that many millions of people will be coming. The Metropolitan Police Commissioner said he thought many millions would be coming. We saw the television pictures obviously last night in central London of thousands and thousands of people lining the Mall and all areas in central London. And I think many people will think, well, we're probably going to see more of it on television if we stay at home and watch the service. Obviously we won't get the atmosphere and be there to pay our respects, but I think we may see fewer people at least travelling into London from outside than perhaps had been anticipated.
Jane, thank you very much indeed. And as we heard from George, many extra rail and coach services have been laid on to bring people from around the country to London for the funeral. Many of them have still to arrive. Liz McKean joined mourners on the train from Glasgow, which has arrived. It arrived during the night.
21:38 going on the Eastern Railway service to London King's Cross.
Waiting for one of the final trains into London, a last chance for people from the furthest reaches of Britain to journey to the capital. Many have no idea where they'll go when they arrive. They simply want to be there. The O'Neill family joined the train at Glasgow. This will be their first ever trip to London, and they have very personal reasons for coming.
I actually met her twice before. I met her in Childline, and we met her when she visited Easter House in the 80s. My husband actually met her then, and my daughter presented her a bouquet of flowers.
She's coming from Kensington Palace now, tonight. Yeah. So she comes along there, and then where?
This group is coming from Newcastle. They met up on the train and have decided to stick together for their time in London. They said they couldn't bear to watch the TV at home. They wanted to be part of a crowd, to share a moment they'll never forget.
She was somebody I'd always admired and respected. And after seeing all the coverage and everything, I just decided 2 hours ago to ring up and see if we could catch a train and just come to London and pay it in person.
The people with AIDS, I think, really brought it home to myself. And I think the landmines more recently has brought it home to a lot of people. She's just done so much for others.
A few moments of snatched sleep. The rest of the night will be spent on the streets. Given the week-long mood of mourning, it's perhaps surprising how many people decided to make this journey right at the last moment. Many of them dropped everything to come. Dirty dishes left in the sink, arrangements hastily cancelled, phone calls not returned.
What's that?
It's Buckingham Palace. That's where the Queen stood.
Down Parliament Street.
They may not have invitations, but everyone feels included. Also on the train, Diana's one-time dancing partner and friend, who'll be present at her funeral.
It'll be pretty bad, especially when they start playing that music. I should just probably fall apart, because I know some bits of music that she loved as well, and that'll just do me in, basically.
Which particular bits?
Well, the Verdi Requiem Mass. I mean, it's so sad.
Those that didn't know Diana feel her loss too. They've been surprised by their own reactions, and that's why they're here, to try to square up to the emptiness she's left behind.
I sort of don't realise what somebody's like until they've gone, and I just wanted to sort of make my mark, as it were, and just be there, you know, make the effort.
Journey's end, they arrive and head off to find their place in the crowd. Another day,
one that will surely be the saddest and most extraordinary of all. Liz McKean, BBC News, King's Cross Station.
Well, police advised earlier that one of the best vantage points to view the funeral procession was Hyde Park, and our reporter Fiona Bruce is there. Fiona, what's the scene at Hyde Park now?
Well, there's probably about 300 or 400 people here. You can't see all of them behind me because people are camped out here because there's one stage on this side and then people are actually camped out over there as well. It's difficult to say how many people are going to turn up here. So, and most of these people were camped out all night because they're so anxious to get their pitch to make sure they could see the screens. I suspect more people, a lot more people are going to turn up later on, nearer 8:30, but I suppose if people are wondering whether or not there's going to be room to come, there may still be. I was talking to people behind me about just to find out where they'd come from. Some people have come as far as Durham. I was talking to a mother who'd come with two very young daughters, and they're pretty cold and pretty damp, as everyone is here. But the feeling here seems to be everyone is determined to be part of a moment in history, really. They decided to come here rather than go along the funeral route because they were worried about the crush. There's quite a few young children here and they were worried it would be dangerous for the children. Everyone's determined to be, as I say, part of a moment in history, and also to try and share some of the feeling of the day with other people rather than just stay at home and watch it on the television.
And of course, from Hyde Park you do have the opportunity to view the funeral cortege twice.
Well, that's right, because it's going to go along the side of the park here. I mean, there's a concern from the police here that people are going to rush over to try and see the cortege. I think people are probably going to be fairly sensible, actually. I mean, most people have got their pitch, and I think they're pretty determined to stay where they are to make sure that they're actually going to see it on the screen. I think people are worried that if they rush over to see the cortege, they might then get there and not be able to get back, and they in fact won't see very much at all. So I suspect there won't be that much movement here, and people are going to stay put so they get the best view possible.
Fiona, thank you very much indeed. And Kate Adey is at Buckingham Palace now. Kate, the scene there.
It's quite a busy scene this morning. About half an hour ago, really, when we got the first light, there were still lots of people curled up in their sleeping bags and just getting up. But now, pretty well everybody is claiming their place. And along the actual line, the side of the route, there's a hefty crowd. And lots of people walking in, a lot of people from the police. There are St. John ambulances. People, and then a lot of people just walking in very purposefully to come to what it will be, I think, one of the most heavily crowded places. And what they're doing now that there's enough light is to go around and see if they can just leave their place, some of the messages and some of the flowers. Flowers are still coming in. It's quite extraordinary. An enormous number of people with bunches of flowers in their hands this morning.
So, Kate, briefly, there are still last-minute opportunities for people who want to come in and play their part in viewing the procession.
There are, and I think what we are safe to say, that one must never predict, that this is a very polite, orderly, well-behaved crowd of people here very seriously.
Thank you very much indeed. For the moment, we'll be back in 10 minutes, but first, news of how the funeral of Diana, Princess of Wales, is being observed where you live.
Good morning from News West. Thousands of people from across our region have begun their journey to London for Princess Diana's funeral. Most have followed advice to leave the car at home and take public transport instead. The first train left Taunton at just after 3. It's already arrived in London.
The train arriving at Taunton station had been specially laid on for those who felt they simply had to be there. Great Western knew there'd be a demand for seats. They were right, every carriage virtually full. The young and the old, each with their own thoughts, each with their own individual way of paying tribute to a friend we'll miss.
Very few of the people on board this train will have met Princess Diana personally while she was alive, and yet somehow it is that overwhelming desire today to be personally involved, to just be close, if you like, which is motivating them to make this very special journey.
I think Princess Diana put herself out. It was the little things that made all the difference to a lot of people. And this small gesture of ours is just our way of doing something for her.
We just felt that we needed to be there. It's a strange feeling, just knowing that everybody was coming, going to London, and we just felt as though we had to be there.
I think, in years to come, be able to look back, hopefully tell my children, grandchildren, what it was all about.
I think if we can look upon it as perhaps a celebration for Di's life, then it becomes a very, very special day for an extremely special person.
It's going to be a long day. Not that anyone's going to mind. What sort of day do you think it will be for you?
For me, quite emotional, I think. And sad. And I just think the way in which Diana died, I think is what's causing us the greatest sadness, the shock.
And as the train called into Bristol Temple Meads, more mourners, more flowers. It was bound to be a journey and a day to be forever etched on memories. Clinton Rogers, BBC News West, Bristol.
If you want to take the train to London for the funeral, there are still services running which get in before 10 o'clock this morning. They're departing from Bristol Temple Meads at regular intervals from now until 8:18. All pass through Bath and Swindon. The last train from Swindon leaves at 8:45. It was an early start too in Gloucester. Graham Gardner joined a group of people who hired their own coach to make sure they didn't miss out on the trip to the capital and the experience of this unique day.
They marched behind a huge heart-shaped wreath of blood-red carnations, around 300 blooms, 4 inches deep and 3 feet square, 2 men taking turns to carry it. Also on board, 250 heart-shaped balloons, ready to be let loose into the sky above the capital immediately after the silence. But first, a technical hitch. A flat battery meant before they could go anywhere, they had to get out and push. A simple demonstration of the community spirit that's characterised people's thoughts and deeds during the last week. Underway at last, and a time to reflect.
I've followed Diane's life ever since I remember when she got married and different things she's done throughout her life and her marriage and everything. And I just come home from work last night and I just felt as if I had to go.
They'd come from all parts of Gloucestershire and beyond, from Gloucester, Stroud, Tewkesbury and the Forest of Dean.
She's done so much for everybody. It's time for us to pay our respects to her now.
Yeah, it is.
I admire Diana and I just felt it my personal tribute. I just wanted to go to London to be there and mourn with the rest of the nation.
We're never going to get anyone like her again. She just was our princess, wasn't she? So.
Among them a young woman on holiday from South Africa, compelled to pay her last respects in the most direct way possible.
I think Lady Di's done so much for so many people, and staying at home and watching television seems so passive. And I don't think Lady Di was passive. And even being foreign, being South African, I think she's really touched a really special note in my heart. And
it may be a day trip to London no one would have chosen, but one that none here would want to miss. Graham Gardner, BBC News West, Gloucester.
And there's a National Express coach leaving Swindon at 6:45 and one from Bristol at 7 o'clock. Baker's Dolphin are putting on an extra coach for London, leaving from the Eastville Tesco's at 6:30. Well, it appears most people are heeding police advice and aren't taking their cars to London. This was the scene on the M4 a few minutes ago, where there was little more than the usual early morning lorry traffic. But the AA say if you're hoping to drive up within the next hour, the centre of London will be very busy and you should leave your car in the outskirts and take the tube. Thousands of people from across the West may be joining crowds of up to 5 million in London for the funeral, but thousands more are attending services closer to home to pay their last respects. Yesterday, mourners poured into Bath Abbey and Bristol Cathedral to form 2 of the biggest congregations ever seen. Many queued for hours to take part. Victoria Dale-Jones reports.
Few would have imagined how many people would come to Bath Abbey to remember Princess Diana. They queued as far as the eye could see. Some had waited for 4 hours. The 1,200 places inside were filled almost immediately. Hundreds of others crammed into the churchyard to hear the service relayed on loudspeakers. After the hymns, they heard an address which paid tribute to Diana's work, the experiences which she'd packed into her short life, and her love for her sons. The congregation was mixed, young and old drawn together in grief.
We had no idea when we planned this service how many people would be there, and our thoughts of how many service sheets should be printed rose from 500 to 700 to 1,000, and we had 1,500 printed and they weren't enough. but I think it is a sign how deeply people have been moved by the death of the Princess.
The scenes were repeated in Bristol, where they said they'd never seen so many people in the great cathedral. Some were in their seats 3 hours early. Soon a queue had snaked across College Green and into the city centre. Some had taken time off work to be there.
I'm so numb by it, I just thought, can't take it in, so I thought I'd just come and leave some flowers. So.
My daughter had just died, tragically, after a road accident. She was in a coma for 3 years. Diana was absolutely lovely to me, and it was like speaking to a friend.
My late husband really suffered, and when she came to Ham Green, I mean, she just made his day. And, you know, you can't forget that, and I think she just liked people.
More than 1,000 crammed inside, but hundreds more were forced to gather at the west door to hear as best they could. Even those who could hardly hear were deeply affected. For some, it was a bitter disappointment.
A lot of people have taken time off, you know, from work and one thing or another to come here, and we've had to strain our ears to hear what was going on. I mean, I don't know who set this all up, but we think we should have had cameras, or we should have had loudspeakers or something.
They should have had microphones or loudspeakers or something, or even a television screen perhaps.
Living in Bristol, we've never been actually inside the cathedral, and something like this we really would have liked to have got in, you know, but still we've come and paid our respects, and you know, we were glad that we were here.
The service was clearly a moving tribute to the Princess. The Dean said she'd refused to be constrained by convention and had reached out to people in acts of love and compassion. Victoria Dale-Jones, BBC News West.
There will be many more interfaith services throughout the West today and tomorrow. These are just some of those you may wish to attend. Today they're being held at St Mary's in Chard, the council offices in Swindon, at Wells Cathedral, St Mary Magdalene in Taunton, and St Mary of the Virgin Church in Almondsbury. On Sunday, Clifton Cathedral in Bristol and Gloucester Cathedral are holding special services. And screens have been set up in Bristol at St Mary Redcliffe Church and on College Green to relay events in London. Well, that's all from us for now. There's special coverage on your local radio station, and we're back at 6:25 tonight when we'll reflect on this unique day. But we leave you now with memories of the People's Princess on some of her many visits to us here in the West. Good morning.
To find out what weather we can expect during the funeral day, across to Helen Young in our weather studio.
Good morning. Well, we have got a weather front in the far northwest this morning. That's going to gradually push rain southeastwards, although as you can see it doesn't reach the southeast of England until this evening, so it will be a dry day down in southeast England. At the moment, that wet weather pushing its way across Scotland then, some strong winds accompanying that as well from the west, and those winds will stay quite strong in the northwest throughout the whole day and through this evening as well. That rain then, quite heavy at the moment in some parts of western Scotland, gradually working its way eastwards then, but for the south starting off very sunny indeed, although the cloud will develop there as we go through the morning. By midday, the first signs of the rain getting into the northwest of England then, fairly light and patchy, but still some heavy bursts as well, particularly over the higher ground. By this afternoon, the cloud will be increasing in the southeast, but still generally dry and bright in southernmost counties. Temperatures this afternoon up to around 20 to 21 degrees, further northwest around 16 to 17. So let's look at the details now then for the whole of southeast England. Starting off very sunny this morning. It has been a fairly chilly night though. Temperatures at the moment are around 12 degrees. As we go through to midday, the cloud will be developing a little bit. Temperatures getting up to 19, and then the cloud increasing from the northwest as we go through to this afternoon. The first signs are some spots of rain perhaps through Oxfordshire, but further south of that it will stay dry. Well, for tonight, that cloud and patchy rain continuing to sink its way southeastward. Still some rain as well coming into the far northwest. Elsewhere, a cloudy night, fairly misty night, particularly in western areas around the coast and over the hills, with temperatures ending up around 11 to 14, so quite a mild night. As we go through Saturday then, that weather system pushes away down into the southeast. By Sunday you can see we've got that weather front in the far northwest. Also some very strong winds accompanying that. So on Sunday morning, windy and wet in the northwest of Scotland. Also fairly cloudy, but some brightness coming through as well. Temperatures ending up by the end of the day around 21 degrees. That's it from me. A very peaceful day to you.
Good morning to those of you just joining us. Tens of thousands of people have spent the night camped out in London waiting for the funeral of Diana, Princess of Wales. Mourners have been arriving in the capital on special buses and trains. The Metropolitan Police are expecting that more than 1 million people will turn up to watch the procession. However, on the roads into London, traffic so far has been quieter than expected. Mourners have camped out overnight along the whole of the route to secure the best vantage point to view the funeral procession. Many have kept up a candlelit vigil throughout the night, and police have urged the public to avoid the areas around Westminster Abbey and Parliament Square, which are already full. But despite the crowds, police say there has been no trouble, and the mourners were notable for their respectful calm.
Burning through the cold darkness, hundreds of candles provide the focus for mourners outside Kensington Palace, waiting for the hour when the funeral procession leaves the princess's home. 2 priests have watched over her coffin throughout the night. There's been little sleep for the people gathered here, just time to reflect on the impact of Princess Diana's death.
It's just like a stillness, it's so silent and it makes you feel really strange. I've never felt like this, I never thought it would affect me in such a way.
It's really amazing how you just look around and you see people of different races and different ages, and different colours.
It's like Diana bridged this gap between everyone.
On the roads leading to Westminster Abbey, people have been camping out to ensure their place along the route which the funeral procession will take. It will be a long, uncomfortable day, but all believe it's worth it.
It's very sad, very, very sad, and I'm just glad I came. I'd rather be here than anywhere else at the moment. This is the place I'd much rather be.
Many people are still on their way to the capital. This train left Plymouth in the early hours of the morning, picking up people en route. And at the moment the roads are still quiet, but with the police estimating up to 6 million people will flood into London to pay their respects, that won't last for long. Alison Holt, BBC News.
As we were saying earlier, the area around Westminster Abbey is already packed, and Diana Medill is there. Diana, quite a crowd.
Good morning, Martin. Indeed, the skies have now brightened over Westminster. A lot of people around here were here overnight, many of them spending the night out in sleeping bags and wrapped up in rugs. There isn't much space amongst the crowds. The crowds are already about 20 to 30 deep around me here, all on one side of the road opposite the Abbey. And at the Abbey itself, that's where you hear the sort of silence that is so important at these funeral times. That's where you see the flowers. That's where the shrine is almost to Princess Diana. Across the road, you have people with candles, with flowers, and waiting in quite a subdued atmosphere for it all to begin. Lots of police, lots of St John ambulance, lots of security people around the place to make sure it all goes smoothly, but not many spaces here still left.
Diana, we're seeing behind you people still being allowed to walk up and down, so presumably the police are not insisting on people taking up their fixed positions just yet.
I think those are exceptional circumstances more so than the general crowds. They're being kept well back. Gradually the police are easing the barriers a little forward so that it creates more space for people to come and watch from one side of the road, but just a few people being let through those barriers to get close to the Abbey.
Diana, thank you. And we're going over now to Jill Dando, who is in our special studio outside Buckingham Palace. Jill.
Well, good morning from Buckingham Palace. The lights have been slowly coming on this morning since dawn. There must be a lot of sadness inside there this morning. Outside, the thousands of people who are expected have been gathering steadily since late last night. Many coming along this morning, of course. Still plenty of room. People are standing 4 or 5 deep at the moment, but those empty spaces, I'm sure, will be filled as the morning goes on. I'm joined by our court correspondent, Jenny Bond. Jenny, amazing scenes ever since the Princess's death on Sunday. What do you think that she would have made of it all?
It's so difficult to tell, isn't it? But I think she could not fail to have been touched by this outpouring of real love. She knew she had great popular appeal. She witnessed it around the world. I saw it around the world. If you travelled with her, there was mass hysteria often. I remember particularly in Tokyo, and people would call out, you know, Diana, Diana, we love you. But I don't think anything could have prepared any of us, and her neither, for these awesome scenes and the quietness of it all. There is no shouting and calling out, but there's a quiet, awesome affection.
But in a way, that reflects her personality, doesn't it? She wasn't a shouting person, was she? She was quiet, she got on with her work quietly in that way.
She did, yes, she was lovely in that way, and she wasn't hugely demonstrative about her own feelings, but she would have, I think, thought that these scenes were just so incredible, and the flowers particularly, I think, are so appropriate, because she loved flowers. And when you went to Kensington Palace, the one thing I do remember, it just comes back to me all the time, as you went through the door, there was this wonderful aroma of jasmine which was growing outside the door, and then you would go in and there would be scented candles floating in glass bowls, and so everything smelt and looked so wonderful.
Well, the focus, of course, today will be on that funeral cortege. Obviously, the princes, the young princes William and Harry, are going to make up their minds today whether they're going to follow their mother's coffin. What do you think they will do, bearing in mind, of course, their very public appearance yesterday?
Yes, well, I think what was in the palace's mind in subjecting them, if you like, to the cameras, both yesterday and the day before, I'm told that they wanted to see how the princes reacted, to break them in gently to what the palace has described as this public ordeal, which it will of course be for them, and in many ways for most people will be a private ordeal. To my mind, they bore up extremely well yesterday. The day before at Crathy Church at Balmoral, William in particular seemed very distressed. The cameras of course had been invited at a distance to film them looking at the tributes, but he found it terribly hard to face the cameras. Yesterday we saw him smiling, interacting with the people, and I think drawing strength from those expressions of love which we saw for William yesterday. Harry, it seemed, people said, seemed just a little bit in a daze. He's that much younger, he's only 12. He will be 13 in about 12 days' time. But I think the judgment will probably be that they bore up well, and I'm told it will be up to the boys to decide whether or not they walk behind the coffin.
Jenny, we'll be talking to you later. Thank you very much, Martyn.
As people come into London this morning, the police say traffic so far has been quiet. The RAC say the roads are surprisingly clear, but the police have already closed dozens of roads around the funeral procession's route. Roads leading into Westminster and Whitehall had to be shut 3 hours earlier than expected because of the number of people already camped there. Scotland Yard are now asking the public to avoid Parliament Square and Whitehall. They suggest that people go to other parts of the route. Motorways into the capital are also quiet at the moment. For the latest on the travel situation, we're going over to the GLR studio at Scotland Yard and travel reporter Sally Bozeman. Sally, are we saying that there is still an opportunity for people to get into their cars or get onto public transport, preferably, and head for the centre of London because there are spaces there?
Yes, Martyn, I think very much so. The roads so far have been very quiet indeed. I'll just show you one picture here on our police cameras at the yard, and that is Parliament Square. Really, cars are not the problem at the moment. People are. They've had to close that prematurely early because of the influx of people, but apart from that, traffic generally around London, central London, and outside of that sort of exclusion zone around Westminster Abbey is really coping very well indeed. However, if you are thinking of driving into central London, do bear in mind that parking restrictions are going to be very severely enforced, more strictly than usual. So anybody coming in really should think about parking way outside London and coming in towards on public transport. If you are coming in on public transport, I'll just tell you about some parking. You can park out at Royal Victoria Dock on the Docklands Light Railway. There are about 1,000 spaces available there, and at Battersea Park there are 2,000 spaces available for cars as well, so that's a good alternative. From there, from both of those points, you can come into the central area on public transport. Now, the nearest underground stations in the area around the Abbey. About 6 of them are useful. Green Park, St James's Park, Victoria, the Embankment, Hyde Park Corner and Charing Cross, all really very much within walking distance of the Abbey area. A reminder though that Westminster Station is closed. You can't access this at all because of roadworks going on nearby. But if you are coming in on overground services, again, if you're coming into Waterloo or Victoria or Charing Cross, all of those main line stations are very accessible, only a few minutes walk away from the area that we're talking about, and so a very good option. And also if you're coming in on trains, there are an awful lot of extra services this morning. A lot of trains are putting on extra carriages, so you should get into central London really with no trouble.
And Sally, it is of course early days to be talking about the potential crowd that is there, because we are still more than 2 hours away from the start of the funeral procession.
Absolutely. It's very hard to estimate. None of us really can estimate because it's such an unusual, unique situation. At the moment, excuse me, the crowds are swelling all the time, but the final number is really anyone's guess at the moment.
Sally, thank you very much. Well, the race to get a good vantage point to see the funeral began early. Scotland Yard estimated 30,000 people spent the night camping out along the processional route. 2 hours ago, police declared that the area around Westminster Abbey and Parliament Square was full. Our correspondent Jeremy Vine spent the night with some of those who camped out to join in the vigil.
This dawn is only the 7th since the Princess died. This morning in London, thousands of people have been sleeping outdoors, in the cold, hoping to play a small part in the day's events. So, morning, how did you sleep last night?
We didn't.
None at all?
No. Nothing. We went to Buckingham Palace at 20 to 2 this morning.
And what have you all been talking about?
And we've been, everything, haven't we? It's been great. The atmosphere's been fantastic, isn't it? Lovely. We're like one big family, aren't we? Yeah.
Just a few hours ago, many of them were arriving in search of a place to bed down.
Come on, I'll meet somebody at 3:30 by that station, right?
Well, it's 10 to 1 in the morning, and this is basically the point at which the whole of Parliament Square becomes impossible to use if you're travelling by car. Pavements are choking up, hundreds, thousands of people are gathering, ready to spend the night here. This was not something the square beside Parliament was designed for, but the people here were in good spirits and drawing strength from each other, even if going to interview someone felt like wading through several bedrooms. But who goes to all this trouble when they can watch the funeral on television?
I don't want to do that. This is like a history for me, and I just want to be part of that history making.
Is it strange to feel so close to someone you never met?
It is very strange. It is, yeah. But it's quite an extraordinary feeling. It's like unbelievable.
I feel quite strange being here. I mean, the sensation of everyone being here is quite strange. I mean, I've never felt it before. As if the country's come together.
I don't think you'll ever feel it again, really.
We're standing there since, 9 o'clock this morning. We've just been pushed out for someone coming on by an hour ago.
Like the mourners, the police looked out of their depth at times. After a week of unforeseen events, they seemed here to be running without a plan. Who pushed in front of whom?
We were sat there bedding down for the night, resting, ready to mourn tomorrow for Her Royal Highness, you know. And now instead we shepherded about like sheep.
The anger caused some tension and some departures. It was back to Nottingham for these two.
And this lady's done nothing to anybody. She's done nothing.
No.
She's come all the way down here from Nottingham and she
Like
hasn't
them.
done nothing.
No.
She's been here for 2 days.
Yeah, like
And now she's got to go home. It's disgusting.
I am disgusted.
But for the most part, things stayed calm here, and there were plenty of quiet moments for people to reflect on their memories of the Princess. Doubtless questions will be asked for years about what it was that triggered such an avalanche of grief. But they won't be asked in the home of Sharon Mayo from Margate. Her story says something about what has made the Princess so special to so many.
Her marriage failed as mine did, and her children she then had to share with their father, which is what's happening to me. I don't have my children all the time, and I just got strength from her when she came onto the television and gave that speech, that very in-depth speech about what she'd gone through. It just reflected my life completely.
You had some of the same
Absolutely,
illnesses and
the same illnesses, and as I say, she pulled through, and that gave me strength, because I wasn't in the public eye like she was. And if she could do it, then so could I. And I wanted to come up here today because I just couldn't have stayed at home and just watched it. I wanted to be here to thank her in some way for helping me through some bad times in my life.
Diana's legacy seems as valuable to the meek as it is to those who've inherited the earth. It is very moving being here. There is something very powerful about a communal experience, an event of such magnitude that it bonds people who would otherwise not have met, not have spoken. Skeptics might say perhaps people are here just because they enjoy that bonding process, or that everyone has created their own Diana. But that doesn't explain the numbers of people here or the depth of feeling.
The mood on the streets of central London last night. And back now to Jill at Kensington Palace.
Well, the world will be obviously following the route of the funeral procession this morning through central London. Let's get out and about and see what's going on around the town at the moment. Hyde Park, and Fiona Bruce is in Hyde Park. Yeah, the crowds are gathering here at Hyde Park now. People are making sure they get their positions so they can see the screen. People have come from far and wide. I'm joined by two people here who've come from Ipswich, I believe. You came. Well, what time did you arrive this morning?
20 past 2, I think. 20 past 2. We came down about 11:30 last night and ended up setting up camp over there.
And why were you so determined to come down here and watch the screen?
I think it's just to be involved in the whole event, isn't it? I mean, it's like a death in the family, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it feels to you?
Oh, yeah.
We've lost a sister. Yeah, and we're here especially for the boys. We just want the boys to know that we're with them all the way. And
yes,
we've got 100%
a
support.
banner here, haven't you? What does it say?
It says, "We love you, William and Harry."
And that's your message of support?
Yes, it is, yeah, all the way.
And what's the atmosphere been like? You've been here, as you say, since the small hours.
It's been quite good, isn't it? I mean, everybody's friendly. I mean, everybody's prepared to have a chat when you walk past and coming up and saying hello and where you're from and everything. The atmosphere is quite good, actually.
Very united. Just an awful sense of sadness, though. Terrible sadness. Terrible loss.
And are you going to stay here to watch the screens, or are you going to try and see the funeral procession as it passes as well?
We'll stay put. We'll take the advice of the presenters when they said find a spot, make a beeline for it and stay there. So we'll do that. We'll stay where we are.
Okay, thanks very much for joining us. Jill. Well, perhaps the greatest concentration of people is at Westminster Abbey today, where Diana Medill is reporting.
And I'm with Susie Parsons, who's one of the guests at the funeral. She's from the London Lighthouse, which is one of the big AIDS charities that the Princess supported. And she gave great inspiration to the charity, didn't she?
She certainly did, both in the public support that she gave us. For example, she came last October to launch our capital appeal for money to extend our centre to provide better services to children and families. But also she would come on private visits, and we were in fact sadly expecting her for a visit just next Friday. She was going to come, and the private visits were so important because many of the people who use our services really felt that because she spent so much time with them and she had a magic touch of making people feel relaxed and at ease with her, and they really feel that they have lost a very dear and personal friend.
Feeling also that she was genuinely interested in what was going on at the charity.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, she had a very good grasp of some of the quite complex social and health policy issues about HIV and AIDS, as well as that wonderful human warm touch that she brought to everything that she did.
And delighted to be invited to the funeral. Susie, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Diana's final journey will of course begin at her home, Kensington Palace, where Sally Magnuson is waiting.
Well, apologies with the sound there with Sally. We'll try to come back to Sally later in the programme. Of course, more of the trains bringing people in from distant parts of the country have now been arriving in London. George Eakin is at King's Cross. George.
Yes, Martin, the really big trains, the last of the big trains from Edinburgh, Leeds, Newcastle and the like will be coming into King's Cross in the next couple of hours or so. I've with me Roger Shire from Railtrack. Roger, it seems that most people have actually come into London already who are going to be here.
Certainly a lot came in last night, particularly from the south. The next hour or so is going to be quite important because trains from longer distances are coming in. But it's been steady all night. We've put on a lot of extra carriages. There have been extra trains, and we will get people out of the station as quickly as possible to their destination.
And these people coming from Edinburgh and Newcastle that have been setting off at what, 4 in the morning, something like that?
Around 4 o'clock or so in the morning, yes. It's been a long journey for them on a particularly sad day, of course.
What other measures has Railtrack and have the rail operators taken to make sure an efficient service is running this morning?
We've cancelled most of our engineering work during the night and will do for the rest of the day. We have extra staff on duty on the stations, extra police are around, train crews and train staff have been around. The whole idea is to get people off the station, to keep them moving and to make it as hassle-free as possible for them.
And the advice is to stagger the journey home as well, try and go early or late, and that's it from King's Cross.
George, thank you. The Duchess of York has paid a special tribute to her sister-in-law. Sarah Ferguson has collaborated with the singer Krista Berg to record an emotional farewell song for the Princess's funeral.
One more simple tribute amongst millions. Many words have been spoken from many hearts this week, and these are the feelings of Krista Berg and the Duchess of York.
The shadows darken and the day is done, and I cannot believe that it's true and you are gone. You were always here beside me. You gave so much as the Queen of Hearts to those without love. You were their voice when they could not speak, a touch for the dying.
The words of the chorus are the words the Duchess of York wrote in the Book of Condolence at St James's Palace this week, as she paid respect at the coffin of the princess she regarded as a sister.
You are shining like a million suns, and there's a new star up in heaven tonight. It's just a testament really from myself and indeed also from Duchess of York, a sort of private statement. Whoever she touched, whoever she came near, would never ever forget her, and she had that presence to make you feel that you were something special. I wonder if you ever knew how much you were loved, and in the darkness of a lonely room, were you empty inside?
As yet, there are no plans to release this as a single, just as yet there are no plans to release Elton John's special version of Candle in the Wind, altered for the funeral service. But it seems a foregone conclusion that there will be a charity record before long, that it will be a #1, and that it will raise massive sums of money for the charities Diana loved so dearly.
Paul Welsh reporting. Well, we couldn't hear from Sally Magnuson earlier at Kensington Palace, but we have the pictures now of the scene at Kensington Palace, where, of course, Diana, Princess of Wales, will make her final journey. It will begin at her old home. As you see, the wreaths and the bouquets of flowers are still there. Very quiet scene there. Hundreds of people lining the route. But as with the rest of the route, from there right up into Westminster Abbey, it's a quiet, sombre, reflective mood. People walking very slowly. And here we are at Buckingham Palace. The light shining on that glorious building. A fitting day, really, for a final farewell to Diana, Princess of Wales, who was the sunshine of many people's lives. And Westminster Abbey, where, of course, the funeral service will be taking place. We've just got pictures of that coming up now, with the crowds gathering, waking up to a new dawn, a dawn when we all say farewell to the Princess of Wales. funeral service will begin there at 11 o'clock. Just look at the crowds there, all respectful, quiet, pensive. Well, Diana chose to retain links, official links, with 6 charities when she announced that she would be scaling down her public activities after her divorce. 2 of those charities were the Leprosy Mission and the Charity for the Homeless, Centrepoint, and I'm joined by representatives of both of those here this morning. Reverend Tony Lloyd of the Leprosy Mission. Diana, with one touch, changed so many preconceptions of leprosy, didn't she?
Yes, she did. People thought that leprosy disappeared 2,000 years ago, but when she was in Indonesia on one occasion in 1989, against all the official advice and some criticism from here, she went into a leprosy hospital and touched a person who had leprosy. The worst part of leprosy is a stigma, and when those pictures were flashed on the television sets right around the world, we wrote to her and said thank you for doing that because it helped overcome the stigma. And we asked her at the same time if she'd become our patron. And since 1990, she's visited our centres, she's toured with us, she's been doing fundraising activities. Charismatic lady, very funny, very witty, but I think all overwhelmingly compassionate. The pictures of her on speedboats in the Mediterranean, 1% of what she was. 99% were these hundreds of stories we heard yesterday from other people.
We've been hearing the stories, haven't we? The private princess.
Yes.
The private princess. What is one memory that you will have of her abiding memory?
Well, her compassion most of all, but one recent one was when she did a fundraising meal for us at Kensington Palace, and there were some very well-placed people there who were able to help us, but Sir Cliff Richard was also there. And I said to the princess, how's Prince William, Ma'am? And she said, oh, well, he's so tall now, he's 6'1". And I said, well, he's going to be 6'4", 6'6", Ma'am. And Sir Clifford said, he's going to have a great first serve, Ma'am. And the princess with a mock voice said, there is more to being a monarch, Sir Clifford, than having a great first serve.
I'm sure that caused a lot of laughter.
And nobody laughed louder than Sir Clifford. Yes, it was wonderful.
Yes. Victor Adebole, did it surprise you that a princess who really had never known any hardship in her life could identify so closely with the problems of homelessness?
Well, I suppose, you know, empathy isn't entirely the preserve of the poet, it's just in short supply, and it didn't surprise me, it impressed me. I mean, her last visit to Centrepoint was to our winter shelter in March, and you know, we see a lot of dignitaries and we see a lot of people that visit the project. What impressed me was that, you know, she walked into a room with 5 or 6 young people and sat down and my memory is that she was laughing and joking and totally informal, connected with them as human beings, and that's very impressive. She didn't have to do that. She could have just walked around and
she introduced her sons to the problem as well.
She did, yeah. She visited our project in Soho in the West End. It was supposed to have been a private visit, but it leaked, and the whole street was just light bulbs. And what impressed me about that was that she was incredibly calm and looked after us as much as we looked after her and her sons, and she was an impressive individual.
Victor Adebole, Tony Lloyd, thank you for sharing your memories. Well, as we said, a sunny morning here at Buckingham Palace with the nationwide weather picture. Over to Helen Young.
Thank you. Good morning. Yes, it is a sunny start to the day in the south of England, and it looks like it will stay like that for a good part of the day. Certainly dry, although the cloud will increase. Let me show you what's happening further afield then. We've got this weather front in the northwest of Scotland already giving rain. That's going to push its way gradually southeastwards as we go through the day. But as you can see, it's still well away from the southeast by this evening, although it will probably give some rain around 5 o'clock at Northampton. Well, out of the window here you can see the blue sky then across London, and that's how we're starting the day. Quite a contrast in the northwest though, some heavy bursts of rain working their way through the Western Isles and into the west of mainland Scotland. That rain as well, perhaps getting 1 or 2 showers across Northern Ireland and also around the Manchester area. Now the winds are going to be quite a feature of the weather today as well, particularly in the northwest. Quite strong winds coming in then, and those winds will increase for many of us as we go through the day. So let's take a look then at the picture for this morning. A sunny start to the day around London and the southeast generally. The cloud will develop as we go through the morning. The cloud thickest in the northwest with some rain pushing its way gradually southeastwards. By midday, the first signs of that in the northwest of England. This afternoon, that cloud and rain pushing its way down towards Northampton and also Oxfordshire, but the southeast of England staying dry and bright. Temperatures today at the high of 20 to 21, the northwest 15 to 16. Looking at the details then for southeast England, it has been fairly chilly overnight. Temperatures now around 12 degrees with a good deal of sunshine, so those temperatures will rise quite quickly to around 19 by midday. The cloud developing and also increasing from the northwest. This afternoon, that cloud thickening up, cloud increasing as well across the rest of southeast England, but temperatures around 21 and staying dry. Overnight tonight, the cloud and the rain slips away to the southeastwards then. Still a cloudy night in store with more rain coming into the very far northwest. A mild night as well, temperatures generally around 12 to 14 degrees. Well, that's it from me. I'll hand you back now to Martyn.
Good morning. Welcome to this special programme if you're just joining us on the day that the people of Britain bid their final farewell to Diana, Princess of Wales. Tens of thousands of people have spent the night camped out in London along the 2-mile route from Kensington Palace, where Diana's coffin has lain since yesterday evening, to Westminster Abbey, the setting for her funeral. Many more are starting to line the roads and bridges on the 77-mile route to her burial place, the Spencer family home in Northamptonshire.
Well, here at Buckingham Palace, the home of the royal family, inside, a very sad time for everyone today, and outside, of course, sadness among the crowds. People have been arriving through the night and into the morning, probably standing 4 or 5 deep by the railings now, and more room, of course, still for people to come, but probably by the time the cortege passes through, there will not be a space to be had. Well, all through the night, mourners have been streaming into London to be present at a gathering on a scale not seen since the end of the Second World War in 1945, and possibly never seen before. More than 1 million people are expected to crowd into the capital. Tens of millions more will be watching on television here, and billions around the world.
On this sombre day, the BBC will be bringing you live coverage as events unfold in the capital and around the country, and a week of extraordinary drama reaches its conclusion. Diana's final journey begins at 8 minutes past 9, when, with her coffin on a gun carriage, the funeral procession leaves Kensington Palace for Westminster Abbey. An hour and 18 minutes later, it reaches St James's Palace, where it's joined by more than 500 representatives of charities the Princess supported. Her brother, Earl Spencer, and his family arrive at the Abbey at 10:35, to be joined 15 minutes later by the Queen and senior royals. The funeral procession is due to arrive at 5 minutes to 11. The service itself begins at 11 and ends 45 minutes later. From Westminster, Diana's coffin will be driven through North London to the M1 and on to her burial at Althorpe, a journey expected to take 4 or 5 hours. Mourners have camped out overnight along the whole of the route to secure the best vantage point to view the funeral procession. Many have kept up a candlelit vigil throughout the night. The police have urged the public to avoid the areas around Westminster Abbey and Parliament Square, which are already full. But despite the crowds, police say there's been no trouble, and the mourners were notable for their respectful calm.
Outside Westminster Abbey, the crowds who have spent the night huddled in sleeping bags begin to prepare themselves for the difficult day ahead. They've staked their places along the route which the funeral procession will take. And as a makeshift breakfast is handed round, there's a growing camaraderie.
I'm sorry there's no marmalade.
Talk about the feeding of the 5,000.
All know it will be a long and extremely draining day, but they also feel it's essential they pay their respects to the Princess in this way.
It's very sad, very, very sad, and I'm just glad I came. I'd rather be here than anywhere else at the moment. This is the place I'd much rather be.
At Hyde Park, a temporary campsite has sprung up, with many people spending the night here. They too are now readying themselves for the coming hours. Those who can't get close to the route taken by the funeral procession will be able to watch it on 2 giant video screens. Others have found equally unusual places to spend the night. These people are making the most of the free accommodation offered on a train which is going nowhere. This particular train was named by Diana, Princess of Wales, in 1988. It's called the Red Cross after one of her favourite charities. And staff here at Paddington Station felt rather than it sitting empty in a depot, it should be turned into a temporary hotel. The capital's stations will be key pressure points during the day. They are already busy with people arriving for the funeral, and the police estimate up to 6 million people will flood into London. The railway companies admit the scale of the demand has taken them by surprise.
Well, we were astonished at the numbers because we know that our special trains were completely sold out. One train that frankly didn't actually exist 48 hours ago, we just put it into the timetable, is completely sold out. We've laid on extra trains, we rearranged our timetable so the trains get into Paddington much earlier.
Many people are still on their way to the capital. This train left Plymouth in the early hours of the morning, picking up people en route. And at the moment the roads are still quiet, but with the police estimating up to 6 million people will flood into London to pay their respects, that won't last for long. Alison Holt, BBC News.
As people come into London this morning, the police say the roads have been surprisingly quiet. Dozens of roads have already been closed along the route the procession will take. Roads leading into Westminster and Whitehall did have to be shut 3 hours earlier than expected because of the number of people who are camped there. Scotland Yard are now asking the public to avoid Parliament Square and Whitehall completely. They suggest that those who still wish to view the funeral cortege go to other parts of the route. And Hyde Park Corner is now also congested, we are told. Motorways into the capital, we're looking there at the M1, as you can see, not much traffic there on the M1, so still opportunities for people to come and take up position, or indeed to drive into the centre of town, because of course there is almost 2 hours to go to the start of the funeral procession itself. And we have cameras all along the route. That is the scene outside Lord's Cricket Ground, where the funeral cortege will pass after the service on its 77-mile journey north. Well, more than 4,000 police officers are on duty in London today in what the police say is one of the largest operations ever mounted in the capital. Superintendent Brian Paddock joins me from Scotland Yard. Superintendent, clearly a big build-up in the centre of town, but on the outskirts perhaps not as crowded a situation as we had anticipated.
Well, we think we have our message across now that people shouldn't bring their cars into central London. It will cause us significant problems later on. We expect there to be more people coming into central London once the trains start to arrive and that sort of thing, and there is already a general build-up.
Yes, I mean, when do you start that build-up really to achieve a high momentum where your force is put under some pressure?
Well, I think it's a question of the fact that the trains that have been laid on aren't due into London until a little bit later in the morning, and that's when we expect significant numbers. But we have, as you say, large numbers of police on duty, and we're quite confident that we can cope with the crowds.
Do you think that everybody arriving in what will in effect be the last hour and a half before the start of the procession will be able to obtain some sight of the cortege?
Well, as you say, we have already closed Parliament Square and the Westminster Abbey area. Whitehall is also busy, and so is the Mall. But it is a long route, and we would ask people to cooperate with us, cooperate with each other, and to spread themselves well along the route.
Do you think that your upper estimate of 6 million people coming into London might have put some people off coming into the centre of the city?
It's very difficult to tell. I think the pictures that we saw last night show that people are not really going to be put off by anything. And we would say, please, we're not trying to deter you from coming into London, but please use public transport. Be aware that you may be stuck in a crowd for 2 or 3 hours, perhaps bring a drink, something to eat. And think very carefully about bringing young children, particularly in pushchairs, because pushchairs and large crowds don't really mix very well.
And your message to those at home thinking, will we go to the funeral or will we not, what would you advise them?
What we would say is leave as early as possible if you are going to come into London. It's going to take longer because public transport is going to be congested, and you'll probably have to walk a fair way once you get here. But please, we wouldn't actively discourage people from coming in, and we will do everything we possibly can to accommodate all those that want to see the procession.
And there is still time for people to set off who are perhaps on the outskirts of London to come in and see the procession.
At the moment, we would say yes, there is time.
Superintendent, thank you very much indeed. And over now to Jill Dander, who is at Buckingham Palace.
Well, exactly 2 hours from now, the Princess of Wales will make her final journey from her home, Kensington Palace, to Westminster Abbey, and then on to the burial ground at her family estate, the Spencer family estate at Althorpe. Joining me now from Kensington Palace, Sally Magnuson.
Thank you, Jill. Kensington Palace was, of course, the princess's home, and it's where her body's lain overnight. And as you said, it's the place where people will get the first glimpse of the gun carriage as it rounds the corner out of the grounds there and begins its long, slow journey to the Abbey. People have been gathering at the barricades here since the early hours. Well, many are still in the grounds, walking quietly around, gasping as we all have been at the sight of that vast ocean of flowers and the flickering candles that have made a shrine of virtually every tree in the park. There are still a few places at the barricades here. Surprisingly, it's been a little quieter in this part than the police certainly were expecting, but people are coming all the time. Among those who are here, two people who've been here for many hours. Mandy has come all the way from Germany, Mandy.
That's right.
Why have you come?
I felt that I just had to be here in London. I didn't want to be watching it on TV from Germany. I wanted to feel it, and I just wanted to be near Diana for just one last time.
Is it what you expected here?
No, it's just quiet. It's so peaceful. It's really peaceful.
Adrienne, you're from America. I know Pearl from America. Why have you come here this morning?
I woke up at 4 this morning to come down and reserve my spot. So because growing up in the States, we regarded Diana as our princess too. She was our big, bright connection to the British monarchy.
What do you make of the scene here?
It's heartfelt. It's very sincere. Everyone's just, it's very loving. That's what you can say. Everyone's just, you know, if a flower falls off the fence, someone picks it up, bends down, picks it up, puts it back on. It's just everyone's got a good attitude, really caring, just how Diana, you know, would have liked it.
And if a candle goes out, someone lights it again.
It's been worth the journey, hasn't it?
Oh, definitely. I wouldn't miss it for the world.
Thank you both very much for
Thank you.
Well, as we heard yesterday, Diana's final resting place will be on an island in the middle of a lake at the Althorpe family estate, where Brian Hanrahan joins us.
Jill, it's very quiet here. The roads all the way leading down to the estate have been cleared, and there are crash barriers put up for what the police anticipate will be a very large number of people who will want to see the final mile or so of the cortege as it comes down the main street here and then through Harleston and then goes up over the hill past the family estate itself and in through the main gates. So far very few people have turned up. There are one or two who have been camped out here overnight, and tucked away behind some of these walls there are camper vans where people have been arriving overnight, and this is the scene down at the gates where the flood of flowers has continued to arrive. People have been coming through the night to put their flowers at the gates. They'll have to be moved away obviously to allow the cortege to pass in, but for the moment it's still possible to walk down to the gates. The last couple of miles have to be done on foot because the whole area around the estate has been closed off in order to make sure that the funeral procession is able to do the last couple of miles without too many people pushing in on it. The burial itself is going to be private. We haven't been told who's there. We're told it will just be close family, so we assume that means that it'll be Princess Diana's mother, Mrs. Shan Kidd, her two sisters, the Earl Spencer, her brother, and of course Prince Charles and her two sons.
Brian, thank you very much indeed. Well, as we know, very close to the princess's heart were children and ballet. She had a great love of ballet and, of course, as we know from her public appearances, a great love of children. I'm joined now by Holly Everson and her mother Jennifer, and also from the English National Ballet by Lisa Pavan. Now, Holly, I know you met the princess when she came to a concert in Cardiff, didn't you? She was organising an event for a hospice there. And what happened? Can you remember that day? It's very daunting, is it? There you are, look, there you are, you're presenting a bouquet to her, can you see? You're looking... do you remember that? What did she say to you? Can you remember? You can't remember that time. Jennifer, it's all very daunting, I know, for Holly at the moment. How has she reacted to the news? Because I know she had a great affection for the princess.
Yes, Holly broke the news to me about the princess's death. She has been very sad this week.
How will you remember her?
I'll always remember of the great work she did for everybody, children, the heart, all the charities, and of course her devotion to her sons.
Did she keep in touch with you?
She was going to open Tea Haven, the hospice, next year, and I always thought I would have met her there. I never thought I would have met her under these circumstances.
And Holly, I think, is going to be taking part in the procession.
Procession, yes.
Well, I hope that's not too upsetting for you, Holly, because she was a lovely lady. Now, of course, Lisa Pavan, ballet was a great love of the princess's life, and you last danced for her, I think, last summer.
Yes, that's
in
right.
a very interesting role.
It was the Queen of Hearts in Alice in Wonderland. The princess, she did a tremendous amount of work for English National Ballet, right through from the fundraising and even down to, you know, what she did personally with the dancers. We had a lot of unofficial visits when she would come into the studios completely unannounced. There would be a murmur going around in the morning that maybe she might pop in, and she quite often did. And you could see from when she would watch rehearsals the joy that she actually got from coming to see the rehearsals. It wasn't just she wanted to see the finished product. You could see, you know, she wanted to know how our feet were and were we tired, and I mean, yeah, she was gorgeous.
Of course, she had wanted to be a dancer herself,
Apparently,
hadn't she?
yes.
Did she ever try and join in the rehearsal?
No, she didn't. But I mean, you could actually see her on a seat. I mean, she would have loved to, I'm sure, but they say, I think she was going to be too tall, but she really did have a passion for dance.
Did she increase people's awareness and support, do you think, for ballet?
I think she did. Certainly, you know, it lifted the profile of English National Ballet, and I think in a way it lifted our respect for it as well. That you could see the joy in which she had for it, and I mean, it helped. It definitely helped us.
Obviously, you were aware at the time of the role that you were playing as Queen of Hearts. Did she say anything about that privately to you?
She didn't actually, because I think. Because she had said that herself, I think they were possibly going to try and take a photograph of the two of us. And she's, you know, for as much public life as she was in, she was very modest, and I think she didn't really want to sort of take away from the glory of the performance that evening. And we didn't speak about it afterwards.
What will your feelings be, Jennifer, after the funeral today?
I really don't know at the moment.
A sense of loss?
Well, yes, a great sense of loss to, well, the whole nation and to the whole world.
What was Holly's reaction when she told you the news that morning?
Very shocked. I don't think she really understood. She just came into the bedroom and said, "Mummy, the princess have died." Well, I got up and heard the news.
That's obviously the feeling of the whole nation.
Yes,
Still,
I think
still
everybody
a sense of
does.
shock and total disbelief. Thank you very much. Back now to Martyn.
And briefly, some other sad news which has come in overnight. There have been scenes of grief in Calcutta following the death of Mother Teresa. The Queen has sent a message of sympathy to the missionaries of charity, in which she said that the nuns' untiring devotion to the poor and destitute had been an inspiration worldwide. Mother Teresa died of a heart attack yesterday at the age of 87.
Sadness in the streets of Mother Teresa's adopted city, Calcutta. Its most famous citizen finally succumbed to chronic heart problems late on Friday night. People, mostly ordinary and poor Calcuttans, came to pay their respects outside the home of her International Order of Nuns, the Missionaries of Charity. Emotional confirmation of her death coming soon after rumors started flying around the city.
Mother Teresa went home to Jesus suddenly tonight at 9:30 p.m. at Mother House.
The Indian Prime Minister, Mr. Gujaral, said words failed him. An opposition spokesman described her as a great soul. Many people agreed.
We're just very sad. I think it's best kept unsaid. Our sorrow can't be expressed in words.
Her funeral is the next step. Some want a massive state occasion, but it's up to the missionaries of charity, an order with an austere vow of poverty, to decide. Her supporters in Calcutta, India and elsewhere will be hoping that her legacy can live on after her remarkable life.
And Sir George Schulte, one of the world's greatest conductors, has died at the age of 84. He was famous for his work at London's Covent Garden Opera House and for 250 records made over nearly half a century. He won an unprecedented 31 Grammy Awards, the music industry's equivalent of Oscars. The Hungarian-born conductor took up British nationality in 1972. He died while on holiday in the Antibes. Well, back now to London, and people have been moving in an orderly way, using the transport services as requested by the police as they head towards central London and to other locations along the route of the funeral cortege. The Jubilee line says that 200 people were waiting before they opened, waiting for 3/4 of an hour for the first train. The Piccadilly line is reporting that its trains are crowded and some of them are packed. So the build-up is clearly starting. And at the Mall, to help those who have been waiting overnight, who've been camped out all night, Salvation Army workers have been handing out free tea and donuts to the crowd. And of course, as well, many extra rail and coach services have been laid on to bring people from around the country to London for the funeral. Liz McKean joined mourners on the train from Glasgow, which arrived during the night.
21:38 going on Eastern Railway service to London King's Cross.
Waiting for one of the final trains into London, a last chance for people from the furthest reaches of Britain to journey to the capital. Many have no idea where they'll go when they arrive. They simply want to be there. The O'Neill family joined the train at Glasgow. This will be their first ever trip to London, and they have very personal reasons for coming.
I actually met her twice before. I met her in Childline, and we met her when she visited Easter House in the 80s. My husband actually met her then, and my daughter presented her a bouquet of flowers.
She's coming from Kensington Palace now, tonight. Yeah. So she comes along there, and then where?
This group is coming from Newcastle. They met up on the train and have decided to stick together for their time in London. They said they couldn't bear to watch the TV at home. They wanted to be part of a crowd, to share a moment they'll never forget.
She was somebody I'd always admired and respected. And after seeing all the coverage and everything, I just decided 2 hours ago to ring up and see if we could catch a train and just come to London and pay it in person.
The people with AIDS, I think, really brought it home to myself. And I think the landmines, more recently, has brought it home to a lot of people. She's just done so much for others.
A few moments of snatched sleep. The rest of the night will be spent on the streets. Given the week-long mood of mourning, it's perhaps surprising how many people decided to make this journey right at the last moment. Many of them dropped everything to come. Dirty dishes left in the sink, arrangements hastily cancelled, phone calls not returned.
What's that?
It's Buckingham Palace. That's where the Queen Street.
Downtown.
They may not have invitations, but everyone feels included. Also on the train, Diana's one-time dancing partner and friend, who'll be present at her funeral.
It'll be pretty bad, especially when they start playing that music. I should just probably fall apart, because I know some bits of music that she loved as well, and that will just do me in, basically.
Which particular bits?
Well, the Verdi Requiem Mass. I mean, it's so sad.
Those that didn't know Diana feel her loss too. They've been surprised by their own reactions, and that's why they're here, to try to square up to the emptiness she's left behind.
Sort of don't realise what somebody's like until they've gone, and I just wanted to sort of
make my mark, as it were, and just be there, you know, make the effort.
Journey's end, they arrive and head off to find their place in the crowd. Another day, one that will surely be the saddest and most extraordinary of all. Liz McKean, BBC News, King's Cross Station.
Diana, Princess of Wales, brought publicity to high-profile causes and comfort to many less well-known ones. One hospital where she's particularly remembered is the Royal at Preston in Lancashire, and our reporter Chris Choi is there. Chris, they have special reasons to remember her there, do they not?
The Royal Preston in Lancashire is one of hundreds visited over the years by Diana. Here, as elsewhere, she left a lasting and emotional impression. Carolyn Johnson is the chair of the Hospital Trust. Tell me about her 2 visits here.
She came in 1983 and signed the visitors book. It was her first solo engagement after her marriage. She also came in 1993 and opened the MRI scanner. And significantly, patients have chosen to come in this morning and still receive their treatment.
Thank you, Carolyn. Indeed, today is a working day here at the hospital, as for many others around the country. Those special arrangements have been made so that patients, staff and their families can watch the service as it unfolds. Adam will be one of those who's watching today. Adam, what makes you feel so strongly about Diana? Because I know you do.
Well, she always helped people, no matter what would happen to her or how much it would cost. And she always made sure that everyone was happy, and if they had any fears, she put them to rest easily.
Adam, have a comfortable day. Diana, what will you be doing today?
Well, I'll be watching the funeral, and I really do feel for her family. I don't think anybody will ever forget her.
I'm sure a lot of people will agree with that. One of the hallmarks of Diana's visit to the hospital here was the way that she was able to sweep aside protocol and the pre-arranged schedule in order to go direct to the patients and spend a lot of intimate time with them. Steve Ashcroft is the chief executive. You saw that at first hand. How did it manifest itself?
Yes, indeed. In 1993, there was a great deal of media attention for her visit, but it was quite clear that her prime concern was to talk to staff, and in particular patients.
And we have 2 of the radiographers from the hospital here, Lisa and Liz. You witnessed what I know you describe as a unique gift of communication between Diana and the patients that she met, often in difficult circumstances.
I feel personally that her communication and listening skills were her greatest asset. They came so easy to Diana, and in turn she made it easy for the people she spoke to be comfortable with her.
Because these were often difficult situations for her to handle, surrounded by an awful lot of medical equipment. Difficult situations.
That's right, but she always seemed to be concerned about the people who she was meeting. You know, she had great compassion.
Liz, you saw that too.
Yeah, she seems to, when she opened the MR unit, she went down the corridor of dignitaries and shook their hands, said hello. But as soon as she got to the patients, you know, she was asking them questions about what was wrong with them and was really concerned for them.
Kath, you were one of the officials that helped escort the princess around and had to arrange the schedule, but she was known for this departure from the pre-planned arrangements and from protocol. How did that show itself?
Yes, we were aware that that would happen and that she would want to spend time talking to people, and she did. She came along. There were lots of people in the crowd who got a chance to talk to her, and the patients and staff got every opportunity. They were delighted to be able to just chat with her.
What effect did she have on those that she met here in the hospital?
Oh, well, certainly it was a lasting effect. I mean, people remember with great fondness both of the visits, both in 1983 and 93.
And so today, the hospital is a focal point for people who are gathering together with those treasured memories?
Yes, that's right, yes.
And indeed, I've spoken to many of the patients and staff already here today. They seem to have almost a mission to explain to others who didn't meet Diana how special she was, how she really was a princess for the people. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you.
Well, with me now is Dr. Carol Cooper, who is a GP, a writer on family affairs, who sees regularly patients who have been bereaved. Carol Cooper, mass mourning on a scale that we perhaps won't have seen before in this country. What are people going through? Is it good for people to grieve in this way?
Well, you're right. We've not seen it before on this sort of scale. We've not seen the overwhelming outpouring of grief on this huge scale before. It's hard to know whether it is good for people, because only history can tell us whether it's actually healthy for a whole nation to mourn en masse in this way. But I know that psychologists say that it is important to grieve, because grieving is how you acknowledge the value of what you've experienced and lost.
And this is obviously one of the reasons that people are coming out like this. Diana obviously means a great deal to them, and they want to be close to her in any way that they can be and to cherish her memory.
And does it mean that the service is not just for the families concerned, but it has been tailored towards the needs of the people as well?
Well, I think obviously there has had to be a compromise here, but I would say that the funeral is primarily for the family of the lost one, and it's obviously mainly for Princes William and Harry and for the Spencer family. And it's a private affair that has to be conducted under some very public scrutiny here. So it has had to fit in with what the public expect, and it mustn't jar with the public mood, as it were. But as a doctor, I would say the funeral is primarily for the family, and we should respect that. It's very important. Obviously the desires of the public do not always tie in with the needs of the family. There may, for instance, be people who want to follow their princess to her final resting place, but this is not perhaps a good thing for the family. There may be people after the event who want as many memorabilia of Diana as they can get, but again, this may not be particularly healthy for the young princes.
And of course the service itself may well bring back memories for those youngsters out amongst the population at large watching on television who have themselves lost mothers. What advice would you have for them?
I think if it makes you sad, you have to grieve, and if it's something you can't cope with, you have to get help. There are an awful lot of bereaved youngsters, not just in Britain, but of course all over the world, because of AIDS, because of wars, and because of landmines, all of which causes were very, very dear to Diana. And yes, I think her family are well aware of the impact that this also has on other youngsters.
How should people be feeling after the funeral? Is it possible to say, or are there a whole variety of different emotions that will come welling up?
There are a variety of different emotions, and normally the stages of grief you go through are initially shock and numbness, and then denial, and then perhaps anger and guilt, and sadness and yearning, possibly depression. And then afterwards you have a more composed period where you try to readjust. You don't really recover the loss of a close person, but you readjust and your life does go on, albeit in a different way. So after the funeral, I think this will, as far as the family goes, I don't know what their exact reaction will be, because everybody is different, but obviously there'll still be some intense sadness. As far as the public goes, I think this will mark the beginning of a more composed period of reflection on what the princess meant to them and to the world as a whole, and how perhaps can we best mark her memory. I think this is what the public should be addressing next after the funeral.
Hal Cooper, thank you for joining us. Well, to those of you who are just joining us, good morning. Tens of thousands of people have spent the night camped out in London waiting for the funeral of Diana, Princess of Wales. Mourners have been arriving in the capital on special buses and trains. The Metropolitan Police are expecting that more than 1 million people will turn up to watch the procession. So far, the roads have been quieter than expected, and London Transport says it appears that mourners are heeding official advice and staggering their journeys into the capital. Mourners are lining up along the whole of the route in hopes of securing the best vantage point. Many kept up a candlelit vigil throughout the night, and police have urged the public to avoid the areas around Westminster Abbey and Parliament Square, which are already full and have been full, in fact, since 4:30 this morning. But despite the crowds, police say there's been no trouble, and the mourners were notable for their respectful calm.
Burning through the cold darkness of the night, hundreds of candles provide a focus for the mourners waiting outside Kensington Palace, waiting for the hour when the body of Diana, Princess of Wales, will leave her home for the last time. 2 priests have watched over the coffin throughout the night. The sea of flowers has continued to grow, and for the people gathered here there's been little sleep. Instead, there's been time to reflect on the impact of the princess's death.
There's just like a stillness. It's so silent, and it makes you feel really strange. I've never felt like this. I never thought it would affect me in such a way.
It's really amazing how you just look around and you see people of different races, and different ages, different colours.
It's like trying to bridge this gap between everyone.
It's absolutely unbelievable what's shown by the people, and our hearts go out to the boys, and we hope someone puts their arms around them like their mum did.
On the roads leading to Westminster Abbey, people have been camping on the pavements to ensure their place along the route which the funeral procession will take. They've been warned to bring plenty of food, drink and warm clothing to see them through a long day. But most believe the discomfort is worth it.
It's very sad, very, very sad, and I'm just glad I came. I'd rather be here than anywhere else at the moment. This is the place I'd much rather be.
Others have found equally unusual places to spend the night. These people are making the most of the free accommodation offered on a train which is going nowhere. This particular train was named by Diana, Princess of Wales, in 1988. It's called the Red Cross after one of her favourite charities. And staff here at Paddington Station felt rather than it sitting empty in a depot, it should be turned into a temporary hotel. The capital stations will be key pressure points during the day. They are already busy with people arriving for the funeral, and the police estimate up to 6 million people will flood into London. The railway companies admit the scale of the demand has taken them by surprise.
We're astonished at the numbers because we know that our special trains were completely sold out. One train that frankly didn't actually exist 48 hours ago, we just put it into the timetable, it's completely sold out. We've laid on extra trains, we rearranged our timetable so the trains get into Paddington much earlier.
At the moment, many are still making their way to London. This special train left Plymouth in the early hours, picking up passengers en route. They're people who are determined to make the journey so they can pay their respects to the People's Princess. Alison Holt, BBC News.
As people head into London this morning, the police say the roads are surprisingly quiet. Dozens have, though, already been closed along the route the procession will take, and roads leading into Westminster and Whitehall were shut 3 hours earlier than expected because of the large numbers of people camped there. Scotland Yard are asking the public to avoid Parliament Square and Whitehall. They suggest that people pick vantage points further along the route. Hyde Park Corner is now becoming congested, but the police say there is still room for onlookers to stand in the Mall, Queen's Gate, South Carriage Drive and Horse Guards Parade Ground. London Transport say the tubes are getting busier. There's a build-up especially on the District Line, and buses, especially around Kensington and Knightsbridge, are congested. For the latest on the travel situation, we're going over to the GLR studio at Scotland Yard and our travel reporter, Sally Bozeman. Sally, what's the latest?
Well, the latest, Martin, is that, as you've hinted there, traffic is really very light indeed. Let me just show you one or two pictures about what's going on around London. What we're looking at now is part of the M4 elevated section. As you can see, that's extremely quiet, hardly anything there at all. That's a section of the M25, also very slow going. Nearer into the centre of London, looking at Kensington High Street, that's been the scene of very heavy traffic all this week. But as you can see from today, it's looking really very, very light indeed. And that really reflects the picture for traffic generally throughout the capital and the approaches into it just at the moment. So if you're thinking of driving into London, I'm sure that it will be a fairly trouble-free journey at the moment. But don't forget, of course, once you come into the area, then the parking restrictions that would normally apply still will today. And in fact, the police are being extra vigilant and towing cars away if they're seen to be parked in the wrong places. For your information, there are some park and ride facilities out on Docklands Light Railway, the Royal Victoria Dock. There are about 1,000 spaces available there. And down to the southwest of London, in Battersea, about 2,000 spaces are available in Battersea Park, so that may help you from there to come in by bus or underground.
And Sally, we're hearing that increasingly buses and tubes are becoming crowded, so people do seem to be taking the advice of the police and leaving their cars at home, and that would be illustrated by the pictures we saw of Kensington High Street just a moment ago, for example.
Absolutely, Martin. Yes, people do seem to understand that it's not a good idea to bring your car anywhere near to the central area of town. Very good idea to stay on public transport where at all possible. It's a very, very good system. It seems to be working well so far.
Sally, thank you very much. We will, of course, come back to you later. And George Eakin is at King's Cross. George, trains starting to flow in yet?
Yes, Martin, we're just beginning to hit the sort of peak period for those people who are going to make it in time to attend the funeral and be somewhere along the route. Some of the special trains have been arriving, and with me are Don and Sylvia Foster, who've come down on a train from Leeds, which was specially extended with extra carriages. Sylvia, what was the journey like? Were there many people on board?
Yes, it was fairly full, but a pleasant journey, yes.
And when did you make your minds up you were actually going to come to London?
On Thursday evening, and then we actually bought a ticket yesterday morning, Friday morning.
So you must have had to set off from home, what sort of time, 4ish?
Yes, just after 4 this morning, yes.
Are there many others who are coming? Do you know other people who are coming from Leeds as well? Later on there are some special trains still.
Yes, I think there are 4 this morning, special trains laid on.
And Don, where will you be heading when you get away from King's Cross? Where are you planning to stand?
Well, we're heading towards Green Park, and then we're going to see what happens once we get to Green Park. Hope we can find a good position to view the funeral procession.
So the important thing is to see the coffin pass you at some stage after the service.
Well, we certainly would like to see that, and then we'd also like to see all the flowers that have been brought to the various palaces.
Have you been struck by this mood among people, a sort of spiritual mood, a mood of human warmth, friendliness towards each other that's been evident this week?
Yes, I have, and I've talked to people on the train coming down who've expressed the same sort of feeling. Yes, it's been very impressive.
And would you like, Sylvia, do you think it would be a fitting testament to Princess Diana if people reflected that perhaps in their daily lives when all this is over?
Oh, I'm sure, yes, and I think it will have a big effect on people. I don't think this week will go, without some kind of benefits arising from it.
Don and Sylvia Foster, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
George, thank you. And there is, as the police were saying earlier, no space at all for anyone else outside Westminster Abbey or in Parliament Square. Diana Medill is there. Diana.
3 weeks ago, the Princess was in Bosnia campaigning against landmines. Ken Rutherford and Jerry White were both with her. They're here now. You're going to the funeral today. Is it important, do you think, for people who were identified with the causes that Princess Diana had to be represented today?
I think it's really important not to forget her legacy that she left all of us. She gave us strength, and I think the message is to carry forward with her message.
What sort of tribute, Jerry, would you like to hear today?
How loving and kind she was, her great grace. We have 3 landmine survivors from Bosnia whom she met, who adored her, and their lives were touched by her, and they are so honored to be here, to know symbolically how much she cared about all those around the world who suffered, but in particular them. So they are here to join the processional. We are here representing our own country, knowing that throughout America people are grieving, and I would say the whole globe is terribly in grief.
Jerry, Ken, thank you for the moment.
Thank you.
Diana, thank you. And you heard there, of course, the police helicopters that will be monitoring the crowds, certainly for the early part of the day, but not during the procession itself. David Dimbleby is our commentator for the funeral procession this morning, and he is in Westminster Abbey. David.
Good morning from Westminster. This is where we'll be watching the whole of this ceremony from just after 9 o'clock this morning. We'll be watching as the very small, rather moving, lonely cortege of the Princess's coffin, drawn by 4 horses, comes from Kensington Palace down here to Westminster. We will, of course, then hear the whole of the funeral service, and then after that, the departure of the coffin from here through the streets of North London. We'll follow it all the way on its way up to Althorpe House in Northamptonshire, where we lose sight of it as it goes into the grounds of the house for burial. It's a brilliant sunny morning for the people who've been waiting outside on the streets, as you've been seeing, and as I say, we'll start up at Kensington Palace, where the Queen's body has been, the Princess's body has been lying all night. Crowds there waiting for the procession to start. At 8 minutes past 9 precisely, the gun carriage will move off from here and come down through the gates there into Kensington Gore and turn along the south side of Hyde Park. And it will go at a very slow pace on this extended route so that more people could see it than they thought possible at the start. There are tens of people, 10 deep on each side, and they come down the south carriageway along the park towards Hyde Park Corner, the corner of Apsley House there where the Wellington Museum is, into Hyde Park Corner itself through the gateway and round under the Wellington Arch with the Winged Victory on the top there, through there and down into Constitution Hill. There, crowds already gathered. They'll see, of course, the procession go both ways. They'll see the funeral cortege coming and the body on its way back to North London. And then to Buckingham Palace, the Victoria Memorial in brilliant sunshine this morning, at Canada Gate, on the right of the picture there, and up the length of the Mall, where they'll be joined by the 500 members of charities that Princess Diana supported, and accompanied by them come across into Horse Guards Parade, where the ceremony of Trooping the Colour takes place each year. The Guards Memorial on the left, and the wide open space of Horse Guards, and through the archway out into Whitehall, and then down Whitehall with its government buildings on each side. Here it turns right and down towards the Cenotaph on its way to Parliament Square. The Cenotaph where the Princess herself went almost every year for the Remembrance Day service. Parliament Square has been jammed for 2 days like this, with flowers laying all round. The statue of Winston Churchill, you can just see the hunched figure at the very bottom of the screen, a relation of the Princess. St. Margaret's Church in front of Westminster Abbey, and that huge crowd there, and then outside the west door of the Abbey itself, where we'll see the arrival of the Spencer family, the arrival of the royal family, of various other guests, friends of the Princess, a few people from public life, a few politicians, but not very many. This has been kept very much as a family event insofar as it's possible inside the Abbey. Bouquets of flowers, great tributes put there, as there are all over London. And so the service inside, Tom Fleming will be inside the Abbey and take us through the details of that service, everything from Verdi to Elton John, and poems read by two sisters of the Princess. It looks as though it will be a very moving service. And after that, the 4 or 5 hours of the journey from here to Northamptonshire, we'll be covering that. We'll be having cameras all the way along the route as far as we can. We know that people are on the bridges of motorways and along the streets, and they'll certainly be along the roads leading up to Althorpe House itself. So join us back here again. We'll be here from 8:30 for the full coverage of the events of today down here at Westminster.
Well, the race to get a good vantage point along the route to see the funeral began early, despite a damp evening and a chilly night. Scotland Yard estimate that 30,000 people camped out along the processional route. Our correspondent Jeremy Vine joined some of those who spent the night in the open air.
I'll make somebody at 3:30 by that statue, right? Well, it's 10 to 1 in the morning, and this is basically the point at which the whole of Parliament Square becomes impossible to use if you're travelling by car. Pavements are choking up, hundreds, thousands of people are gathering, ready to spend the night here. This was not something the square beside Parliament was designed for, but the people here were in good spirits and drawing strength from each other, even if going to interview someone felt like wading through several bedrooms. But who goes to all this trouble when they can watch the funeral on television?
I don't want to do that. This is like a history for me, and I just want to be part of that history making.
Is it strange to feel so close to someone you never met?
It is very strange. It is, yeah. But it's quite an extraordinary feeling. It's like unbelievable.
I feel quite strange being here. I mean, the sensation of everyone being here is quite strange. I mean, I've never felt it before. The countries, as if the countries come together.
I don't think you'll ever feel it again, really.
We've standing there since, 9 o'clock this morning. We've just been pushed out to come along by an hour ago. Like the mourners, the police looked out of their depth at times. After a week of unforeseen events, They seemed here to be running without a plan. Who pushed in front of whom?
We were sat there bedding down for the night, resting, ready to mourn tomorrow for Her Royal Highness, you know. And now instead we shepherded about like sheep.
The anger caused some tension and some departures. It was back to Nottingham for these two.
And this lady's done nothing to anybody. She's done nothing.
No.
She's come all the way down here from Nottingham and she
Like
hasn't
them.
done nothing.
No.
She's been here for 2 days.
Yeah, like
And now she's got to go home. It's
Yeah.
disgusting.
I am disgusted.
But for the most part, things stayed calm here, and there were plenty of quiet moments for people to reflect on their memories of the princess. Doubtless questions will be asked for years about what it was that triggered such an avalanche of grief. But they won't be asked in the home of Sharon Mayo from Margate. Her story says something about what has made the princess so special to so many.
Her marriage failed as mine did, and her children she then had to share with their father, which is what's happening to me. I don't have my children all the time, and I just got strength from her when she came onto the television and gave that speech, that very in-depth speech about what she'd gone through. It just reflected my life completely.
You had some of the same
Absolutely,
illnesses and
the
everything.
same illnesses, and as I say, she pulled through, and that gave me strength because I wasn't in the public eye like she was, and if she could do it, then so could I. And I wanted to come up here today because I just couldn't have stayed at home and just watched it. I wanted to be here to thank her in some way for helping me through some bad times in my life.
So the night was a time for intense personal thoughts, as well as for comradeship, and just a little sleep. It is very moving being here. There is something very powerful about a communal experience, an event of such magnitude that it bonds people who would otherwise not have met, not have spoken. Skeptics might say perhaps people are here just because they enjoy that bonding process, or that everyone has created their own Diana. But that doesn't explain the numbers of people here, or the depth of feeling. Astonishing to think this is only the 7th dawn since the princess died. It is all so recent. Overnight, people have been talking about love a lot, about how she showed it for other people, and how they love her for it. They haven't slept much, but then they probably didn't want to. So, morning, how did you sleep last night?
We didn't.
None at all?
Nothing. We went to Buckingham Palace at 20 to 2 this morning.
And what have you all been talking about?
And we've been, everything, haven't we? It's been great. The atmosphere's been fantastic, isn't it?
Lovely.
We're like one big family, aren't we?
Yeah.
Gary over there, he's been brilliant.
He's been brilliant.
The dictionary has been plundered for adjectives, but people just keep talking about this being extraordinary. The mourners who've stayed overnight want their place at the front near the Abbey. And no matter how many thousands more come today, they'll keep it.
Well, use of public transport in London seems to be building up now after a quiet start. Geoffrey Ellerton of London Transport is in BBC Greater London Radio studio at Scotland Yard. Geoffrey, any pattern building up, any surprises?
Not many surprises, no. We saw very heavy usage of the night bus service during the night, and we saw some very heavy usage similarly of first tube trains in the morning. For example, at Stanmore we had 200 people queuing before 5 o'clock, and the first train from there was completely full by the time it left Stanmore. Then things have been fairly quiet, but they are beginning to build up quite distinctly now, and we're seeing quite heavy traffic, for example, on the District line.
Do you estimate that everyone who wants a good vantage point is likely to get one?
I really can't comment on that. I mean, what seems to be the case is that the centre of London, along the procession route itself, is obviously very busy, but one suspects there's probably still reasonable space in the parks for anybody who wants to go there.
Geoffrey, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Many people are still on holiday, of course, but they too are finding their way in which to remember Princess Diana. Our reporter Wendy Robbins is in Blackpool.
Blackpool Tower, the flag at half-mast, a symbol of a holiday town that's readying itself for a sombre day. 100,000 people have poured into Blackpool this weekend to see the illuminations. But all along the Golden Mile, The amusement arcades are shuttered, and the fairground attractions at the Pleasure Beach will be closed all morning. Well, we're here on the seafront. As you can see, the weather's very different from London, and with me is the Mayor of Blackpool, Fred Jackson. This is the entertainment capital of the North. Did you have a lot of difficulty persuading everybody to close it down today?
No difficulty at all, Wendy. The people of Blackpool wanted to show their respect and love for Diana, and everywhere has closed down as a mark of respect.
Have you ever seen Blackpool this sort of closed?
I can't remember ever seeing Blackpool closed like this.
Now, when Diana, Princess of Wales, visited Blackpool in 1991, you were among the group who accompanied her. What's your most memorable moment of that day?
The warmth and the genuine interest that she had in people, and her sense of humour. I mean, she was intrigued that both my wife and I were both councillors together, and she joked about the dubious reputation of politicians, and she said, it was even worse than her reputation, and she said, how did we cope with two of us in a family, and she had a lovely warmth about her.
And she, I believe she mentioned the boys, William and Harry, to you, Mrs. Merritt.
Yes, she did, yes. She said that her boys would love to come to Blackpool. She talked about my boys. She said that how good it is for the young people in Blackpool. And she said the warmth of the people of Blackpool. She was overwhelmed. And as she talked, you could feel the sense of love. And when she shook hands with you, you could feel that sense of care and love.
Thank you. Now, Jack Kay, you were also there that day that Princess Diana came to visit. What's your abiding memory?
My abiding memory of Princess of Wales was when she entered the town hall. We was waiting on the first floor. We'd put a light lunch on for her. And the first I knew that she was actually in the building was when I heard her coming up the main staircase. And she was going squelch, 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 squelch.
Because of the wet in her boots?
Well, because it actually poured down.
Well, the town hall, of course, has become a shrine to Diana over the past few days. Yeah. And many people have been signing condolences books and laying flowers. With me is Nesta Strang, who's come all the way from Cardiff. What have you written in the condolence book?
Oh, dear God, look after our lovely star up in heaven.
And you're in Blackpool on holiday?
Yes, on holidays.
What did Princess Diana mean to you?
Oh, she was a darling. I never actually met her. But when I came out from my home one day this week, we had heavy rain all day. I came out to send Gaynor on the dawn evening, and that one star was out. I said again, oh, it's Diana. And when we came out from the hotel last night, there was a lovely rainbow. Oh, we said, there's Diana. You felt, oh, I went cold all over.
And you've brought your daughter with you, Gaynor. Gaynor, what did you write in the condolence book?
I wrote, I felt Diana was the jewel in the crown. She meant so much. I never met her, but she was so caring. She wasn't afraid to touch people.
No.
And I think that's what meant so much to everybody.
Those loving hands,
yeah.
I
And
think.
even though we're on holiday, we felt it's such a sad day, we couldn't forget her.
Thank you all very much.
Time is 3 minutes to 8, just over an hour to go to the start of the funeral procession. For the weather along the route and in the rest of the country, over now to our weather studio and Helen Young.
Good morning. Well, quite a fitting start to the day in London. Blue sky here. The sun is shining at the moment. A different story elsewhere, though. In the northwest, we have this weather front, and that's going to gradually sweep its way southeastwards through the day. But as you can see, even by this evening, it's nowhere near southeast England. And so, for the London area, it will be dry, although turning a little bit more cloudy. Now, at the moment, the rain is in the northwest of Scotland then. Also some showery rain coming into Northern Ireland, and some showers elsewhere in the west of Britain. But generally, for many, a dry and a fine start to the day. The winds are going to be quite strong today, particularly in the northwest, coming in from a westerly direction, but I think for many today it will be a fairly breezy day. So for this morning then, starting off sunny, the cloud will increase slightly as we go through the morning for many parts of England and Wales, but gradually that cloud and patchy rain beginning to push its way southeastwards, getting into northwest England by around midday. As we go through the afternoon then, that cloud and patchy rain continuing to push its way down, probably getting to the Northampton area around about 5 to 6 o'clock this afternoon and this evening. Temperatures today then at the highest around 20 to 21 degrees, further northwest around 16 to 17. Well, the detail for the southeast then. For London, the temperatures are around 12 degrees at the moment. It is a sunny start, and that sunshine will push those temperatures up to around 19 degrees by midday. At the same time, we will begin to see some cloud developing, and then the cloud increasing from the northwest. As I said, getting into Northampton around 5 or 6 o'clock. Top temperatures ending up around 21 degrees. Overnight tonight, the cloud and the rain will slip away southeastwards. More rain will come back into the northwest of Scotland, and here it will be a very windy night. Elsewhere, cloudy, turning very misty, particularly for western coasts and hills. A good deal of cloud around as well. Lowest temperatures tonight around 11 to 14 degrees, so quite a mild night. Into Sunday, we lose that weather front then to the southeast. Still this weather front in the far northwest though, and that's going to give some further rather heavy bursts of rain in the northwest of Scotland through the day. A cloudy start elsewhere to the day, but gradually brightening up, particularly in the southeast, with top temperatures around 21 to 22. Still very windy in the northwest, but the wind's easing elsewhere as we go through the day. That's it from me.
Good morning. It's 8 o'clock on Saturday, September the 6th. Welcome to this special programme on a day that we could never have imagined, when the people of Britain will bid their final farewell to Diana, Princess of Wales. Tens of thousands of people have spent the night camped out in London and are taking their places along the 2-mile route from Kensington Palace, where Diana's coffin has lain since yesterday evening, to Westminster Abbey, the setting for her funeral. Many more are starting to line the roads and bridges on the 77-mile route to her burial place, the Spencer family home in Northamptonshire.
Well, a peerless day here in central London. Clear blue skies, bright sunshine, an appropriate fitting farewell for Diana, who brought so much light to so many lives. Well, throughout the night and during the morning, mourners have been heading for London to be present at a gathering at a scale really not seen since the end of the Second World War in 1945, and possibly never actually seen before. More than 1 million people are expected to crowd into the capital. Tens of millions more will be watching on television here, and billions around the world.
On this sombre day, the BBC will be bringing you live coverage as events unfold in the capital and around the country, and a week of extraordinary drama reaches its conclusion. This final journey begins at 8 minutes past 9, when, with her coffin on a gun carriage, the funeral procession leaves Kensington Palace for Westminster Abbey. An hour and 18 minutes later, it reaches St James's Palace, where it's joined by more than 500 representatives of charities the Princess supported. Her brother Earl Spencer and his family arrive at the Abbey at 10:35, to be joined 15 minutes later by the Queen and senior royals. The funeral procession is due to arrive at 5 minutes to 11. The service itself begins at 11 and ends 45 minutes later. From Westminster, Diana's coffin will be driven through North London to the M1 and on to her burial at Althorpe, a journey expected to take 4 or 5 hours. Police say that at least 30,000 people camped overnight on the streets of central London to secure the best vantage point to view the funeral procession. Millions more are expected to join them, and police are urging visitors to avoid areas around Westminster Abbey and Parliament Square, which are already full, and have been full in fact since 4:30 in the morning. But despite the crowds, police say there's been no trouble, and the mourners have been notable for their respectful calm.
Outside Westminster Abbey, the crowds who have spent the night huddled in sleeping bags begin to prepare themselves for the difficult day ahead. They've staked their places along the route which the funeral procession will take. And as a makeshift breakfast is handed round, there's a growing camaraderie.
I'm sorry there's no marmalade.
Talk about the feeding of the 5,000.
All know it will be a long and extremely draining day, but they also feel it's essential they pay their respects to the Princess in this way.
It's very sad, very, very sad, and I'm just glad I came. I'd rather be here than anywhere else at the moment. This is the place I'd much rather be.
At Hyde Park, a temporary campsite has sprung up, with many people spending the night here. They too are now readying themselves for the coming hours. Those who can't get close to the route taken by the funeral procession will be able to watch it on 2 giant video screens. And 30,000 police officers will be on duty to make sure the day goes smoothly. Others have spent the nights in equally unusual places. These people made the most of the free accommodation offered on a train which was going nowhere.
Well, it's excellent. I mean, I think we would have been sitting on the floor somewhere if it hadn't been for this, so it's just nice to sit down. Everyone's speaking to you, and we've just met some people from Wales coming up on the train, and everyone was just really friendly, and there was sort of old people, young people, and everyone was getting on, talking together.
This particular train was named by Diana, Princess of Wales, in 1988. It's called the Red Cross after one of her favourite charities. And staff here at Paddington Station felt rather than it sitting empty in a depot, it should be turned into a temporary hotel. The capital's mainline stations will be key pressure points throughout the day, and they're now busy with people arriving for the funeral. The railway companies admit the scale of the demand has taken them by surprise.
Well, we were astonished at the numbers because we know that our special trains were completely sold out. One train that frankly didn't actually exist 48 hours ago, we just put it into the timetable, is completely sold out. We've laid on extra trains, we rearranged our timetable so the trains get into Paddington much earlier.
At the moment, the roads are quiet, and the police are hoping that's because people have decided to heed their advice to leave cars at home.
Leave as early as possible if you are going to come into London. It's going to take longer because public transport is going to be congested, and you'll probably have to walk a fair way once you get here. But please, we wouldn't actively discourage people from coming in, and we will do everything we possibly can to accommodate all those that want to see the procession.
The VIPs are also arriving for the funeral. A short time ago, America's First Lady, Hillary Clinton, landed at Heathrow. She's now making her way to Westminster Abbey. Alison Holt, BBC News.
Well, in just over an hour's time, Princess of Wales will leave her former home, Kensington Palace, for the final journey. There is Sally Magnuson.
People are now really beginning to pour into the road in front of Kensington Palace, where the Princess's gun carriage, as you say, will begin that journey. It started off quieter, but it's really beginning to fill up now. The atmosphere, I wouldn't say somber really at all. It's quiet, it's reflective, but I think everybody here is struck by the tremendous camaraderie there is around. Complete strangers from all over the world standing, talking to each other, engaging each other in conversation, reminiscences in some cases about the Princess. Julia Vasey from Australia, how have you found it?
To me, it almost typifies Princess Diana because it's very warm, it's loving, it's caring. Yes, it's muted, but there's a warmth and a friendship that's spread among the people, total strangers, and yet you all feel like you came together and you are together.
Why did you feel that you wanted to be here today?
When I returned to Australia, I could not say to my grandsons that I was living in London at the time of this event and not to be here, to be able to tell them what I saw, what I felt. It's just, to me, it's going to probably be the most moving event in my lifetime.
Is it as you expected it to be, or are you surprised?
It's more. I walk here every morning around this area for fitness, and I still can't comprehend the outpouring of affection shown by the flowers, by the writing, all the little notes, and somebody sat and wrote those little tributes. I mean, to me, it's just, it's awesome.
And many, as we've all been noticing, many young people, young men.
This morning, 4 young, strapping young men walking with their flowers to pay their tribute. It kind of surprised me, and yet it shouldn't have.
Peter Goff from London, why did you come?
Well, I came here really to pay my last respects to a unique young woman, one will be sorely missed by the world. And I agree with you that the mood is actually slightly more upbeat, I think, today than it has been earlier in the week. Perhaps it's the sunshine on our back. Perhaps the people have had a week to think about it now, but it certainly seems to be convivial down there. Somber, but I mean heartfelt, but convivial, I think. Friendly.
And Julia, thank you very much indeed. Back to the studio.
Well, the slow procession will make its way through Hyde Park, around Hyde Park Corner, up Constitution Hill, and will eventually slowly pass Buckingham Palace behind me. Kate Adie is down with the crowds.
Here at Buckingham Palace, this is the very centre and heart of great state occasions, and that is what it is now growing towards, a great state occasion. Here we have thousands of people. With the early morning sunshine, you can see just a sea of heads all around, around the memorial in front of the palace, and also stretching along every bit of the route, 4 or 5 deep now. It's an atmosphere of concentration, people chatting quietly. It's still very, very quiet here for so many people, but there's also a great deal of preparation. We've seen a lot of official people. There's a little bit of toing and froing in front of the palace of some cars, some policemen. There are a lot of people moving in to help with the crowds, and altogether it's building to one of those moments where everyone here, huge numbers of people, want to take part in what is going to be something very special. And I might add that there are still flowers coming. In front of Buckingham Palace, there are still bunches and bunches of flowers being brought in by people. As they come to stand and watch, they lay their flowers first.
Well, the cortege will move its way slowly down the Mall, of course the scene of many famous processions over the years, one of the saddest today. Krishnan Gurumurthy is in the Mall.
There's still a good amount of room on the Mall for people to come here and watch the funeral procession. The crowds here are perhaps 10 people deep. A quiet crowd, and as Sally Magnuson found at Kensington Palace, not sombre, but perhaps reflective, and also, I suspect, rather tired by both the emotion of the last few days and also by the fact that many people spent the whole night camped out here reserving their place. The other thing that's striking is the huge number of young people who've turned out for this occasion, and some have been in London for some days, and some took rather more spontaneous decisions to arrive here. 2 of those people are here with me now, Anna and Simon. You did take a very sort of spur-of-the-moment decision to come here, didn't you?
Yes, we did. We actually came to London last night and went clubbing, and then we came on here afterwards. We wanted to come before, but we thought perhaps the crowd would be too intimidating.
Oh, and what are you struck by the atmosphere here?
It's a very peaceful atmosphere. It's, as you say, very reflective. There's a great sense of like togetherness and union amongst the people here. It's not intimidating at all. In fact, it's, you know, it's good to be here.
And do you feel prepared for what you're going to see later on this morning?
I don't really know. I think that's where we came, just to kind of find out what it was going to be like, and I can't really say until it happens.
I don't think you can sense the enormity of the whole ordeal unless you're actually here. I think particularly it's very important for our generation to be here, to feel the atmosphere, to actually see it firsthand so that we can pass on to future generations what it was like.
And I'm sure that will become apparent very soon. That's the scene here on the Mall.
Well, moving on, it will turn right into Horse Guards Road, then into Whitehall, up Whitehall, to its final destination, Westminster Abbey, where I'm joined by Diana Medill.
People have now taken their place opposite the Abbey. It's absolutely 30 to 40 people deep standing opposite, trying to get a good glimpse of what's going on. Under the eye of a police helicopter and also police marksmen and police officers on the roofs of local buildings, everything is finally taking shape. We've got the road sweepers out doing the last minute cleaning up before some of the guests arrive. Some are already here, talking to some people in the crowd and also to others from charities and so on who are waiting to take their seats inside the Abbey. And just across from where we are now, we have all the flowers made out almost to a shrine to the princess, with messages to her, her families, and also pictures of her as well. So I would say it's a pretty subdued crowd here, and reflective, and just waiting for the moment of the funeral cortege to arrive.
Well, that's the picture along the route so far this morning. Martin.
Well, briefly, more sad news which has come in overnight. There have been scenes of grief in Calcutta following the death of Mother Teresa. The Queen has sent a message of sympathy to the missionaries of charity, in which she said that the nuns' untiring devotion to the poor and destitute had been an inspiration worldwide. Mother Teresa died of a heart attack yesterday at the age of 87.
Sadness in the streets of Mother Teresa's adopted city, Calcutta. Its most famous citizen finally succumbed to chronic heart problems late on Friday night. People, mostly ordinary and poor Calcuttans, came to pay their respects outside the home of her International Order of Nuns, the Missionaries of Charity. Emotional confirmation of her death coming soon after rumors started flying around the city.
Mother Teresa went home to Jesus suddenly tonight at 9:30 p.m. at Mother House.
The Indian Prime Minister, Mr. Gujaral, said words failed him. An opposition spokesman described her as a great soul. Many people agreed.
We're just very sad. I think it's best kept unsaid. Our sorrow can't be expressed in words.
Her funeral is the next step. Some want a massive state occasion, but it's up to the Missionaries of Charity, an order with an austere vow of poverty, to decide. Her supporters in Calcutta, India and elsewhere will be hoping that her legacy can live on after her remarkable life.
Sir George Sholto, one of the world's greatest conductors, has died at the age of 84. He was famous for his work at London's Covent Garden Opera House and for 250 records over nearly half a century. He won an unprecedented 31 Grammy Awards, the music industry's equivalent of Oscars. The Hungarian-born conductor took up British nationality in 1972. He died while on holiday in the Antibes. And now back to Jill at Buckingham Palace.
Well, during her public life, the Princess of Wales was photographed many times with children in all sorts of situations, normally, of course, during the course of her charity work. And one of the young boys that she met was Lawrence Chambers. Lawrence, tell me about the time you met the Princess.
I can't remember.
You must be able to remember. Everyone remembers the photograph, of course, when you were pictured hugging the Princess. Tell us about that. What happened?
Can't.
You were at a centre, weren't you? You were at the Conductive Education Centre in Birmingham, where you, of course, had treatment for your cerebral palsy. And she came up to you, and you presented her with something?
I can't remember.
Let's ask your dad, Graham. What happened? It's all a bit overwhelming, isn't it?
It is. It's a very emotional day for us all. Lawrence was asked to escort Princess Diana around the Birmingham Institute for Conductive Education when she officially opened the centre. A unique honour for him, obviously. And at the end of the visit, Diana asked him for a kiss goodbye, and I think everybody saw the photographs that were in the newspaper and on television.
There we are there.
A very, very spontaneous gesture.
So there was a kiss goodbye. Oh, it was more than that, though. It was a huge hug. And what did the Princess say to you? She said she wasn't expecting that, didn't she? Graham, what are your personal memories of the Princess? Not just the personal ones that you remember, of course, of the day, but her wider legacy.
I think most people would remember her, especially when she was actually working with children. I think she was at her best with the children. They were her children, and she was their princess. And you only had to see the faces of the children when she walked into a room. She illuminated the room. The faces of the children just exploded with wide grins.
What were you saying, Lawrence?
Nothing.
No, you must tell us how you felt. What did you and your friends say after the visit? What were you all talking about her visit?
They thought you were a very lucky boy, didn't they?
Why do you think you were chosen to show the Princess around?
In truth, it was the fact that Lawrence was actually the first child from the Birmingham Institute to leave there to go on to mainstream schooling. So it was a unique honour for him, obviously.
Thank you very much indeed for those memories.
Our pleasure.
We go now over to Hyde Park, where, of course, there are going to be huge television screens relaying the funeral service to the many thousands of people gathered there. Fiona Bruce is waiting for us.
Yes, the numbers have swelled here considerably. When I arrived here early this morning, it was dark and there were probably 200 or 300 people camping out with candles. There's now probably, you can't see them all from behind me because they're to my left and my right. There are probably more like 1,000 people here now. Everyone's trying to get a good position so they can see the screens. Some people have just come dressed warmly because it's been quite a chilly morning. Some people have actually come in full funeral attire in black suits
and black ties. It's a fairly sombre occasion here. Everyone's determined to get their pitch, to get a good view of the screen, and rather than watch a screen at home, as they could obviously on the television, they want to be here to be part, I think, of an event, to be part of history, and to join in the sense that the nation has come together and that people are here experiencing this together, sharing in their grief, and everyone's here waiting to see what they can see up on the screens as soon as it starts.
People are watching and remembering in Blackpool too, as they are in all towns and cities right across the country. Our reporter Wendy Robbins is in Blackpool.
With me are Philip and Judy Woolcock, who live just outside Blackpool. They developed a special relationship with the princess after she visited their daughter Louise, who sadly died of cancer 5 years ago, aged just 21. Philip, we keep hearing new things about the princess all this week. Secret visits, secret phone calls, secret letters, but of course none of this surprises you.
No, Diana, after first meeting Louise, met us on another 2 occasions, and she was a beautiful and warm young lady, as everybody has said, who didn't stand on ceremony. She was very much her own woman and did very much as she wanted and saw to be the right thing to do, yeah.
How long before Louise died did she actually strike up the relationship with the princess?
Just 7 days, in the 28th of July 1992, Louise struggled to live. In fact, we think she could well have died some weeks before that, because she knew Diana was coming to see her for the 2nd time. And she was full of morphine. I think immediately Diana saw the state that Louise was in, 7 days from her death. She was shocked and taken back, and I think then Diana struck, a chord was struck by Louise, our daughter Louise, in Diana's heart, which remained.
Well, Judy, you've brought a picture in for us to see of Louise with the princess. With Louise there. And how long ago before she died was that taken?
That was exactly a year before Louise died.
What do you think it meant for Louise to get so friendly with Princess Diana?
It meant everything. They were really strong women, and Louise was so proud to meet the princess. She really was proud of that achievement.
Now, Philip, Princess Diana used to ring you at all sorts of times. What did she say when she used to ring?
She always said the same thing. She said, Philip, it's Diana here, is it convenient to talk? And I was always tempted to say, no, not quite, I'm busy making a cup of coffee or something. But of course, it was an example of her exquisite manners. And that's why she made people feel so special. She focused entirely upon you. You were the main thing. Is it all right if we have a conversation now, or perhaps I could ring later, sort of thing. It was her exquisite manners that impressed.
Now, she rang you only about 4 weeks ago.
5 weeks ago, exactly, yes.
What was her mood?
I had seen her down, I had heard her down. She'd obviously been through a great deal of difficulty in her personal life, most notably with regard to her divorce. I said to her on that evening 5 weeks ago, I've never heard you sounding so strong and sounding so full of life. I really said that, and it turns out to be a tragic irony now that I had to say that. And she was very pleased to hear that. She said, Philip, you're awfully sweet.
Philip, what do you think of the crowds building up in London today and the atmosphere down there?
It's the best of times and the worst of times, in the sense the best of times in that the British people are showing themselves, as they always do in times of crisis, in their best light by coming together in the way that they have, and the worst of times because we have lost a guiding light forever.
Judy, what will you remember most about Diana?
I remember Diana's laugh. She had a lovely chuckly laugh in her throat, her eyes, her hair, her clothes. I just remember everything about her. I'm just so proud and privileged to be able to have met her.
Philip and Judy Woolcock, thank you both very much.
And in Cardiff, a special gathering at Llandaff Cathedral to watch and mark the funeral procession. Sarah Edwards is there. Sarah, what's happening with you?
Yes, Martin, this is Sarah Edwards here at Llandaff Cathedral on a cold, bright morning in Cardiff, where there's a sombre feeling of expectancy. We're expecting over 1,000 people here on the green in the little village of Llandaff alone, and obviously a packed capacity in the cathedral itself. I'm joined by the Dean of Llandaff Cathedral. Dean, could you explain to us exactly what's going to be happening in the service here this morning?
There's a large television screen in the cathedral, and we shall have a link up with Westminster Abbey. So in that respect, the cathedral will be an extension of the Abbey. People will be there watching the funeral service on the television, and we are trying to make them feel more a part of it by having the sound turned down during the hymn so that our own organist is able to accompany the hymns. And we'll be saying prayers before and after the transmission in English and in Welsh.
And what sort of people will you expect to be here?
Well, VIPs have been invited, prominent civic dignitaries and so on, but a good number of tickets have been given out to the general public.
And of course lots of the general public have already been here this morning. Indeed, some of them are here at 3 o'clock in the morning. So all sorts of people will be here, won't there?
Oh yes, all sorts of people will be here, indeed.
And I mean, how do you find this is going to carry on throughout the week? Do you think this is going to help in some way here in the capital city of Wales?
Well, I'm sure people need an opportunity to express their grief and to pray for the departed, and this is what's being provided for them.
Oh, we're here. It seems strange on a bright morning, surrounded by a sea of flowers. There was a very special feeling here, wasn't there, because she was Princess of Wales?
Yes, she did visit the cathedral some years ago, fairly recently, and we have some photographs of the occasion when we were giving thanks for the restoration, and that visit is still remembered here very affectionately.
And this is where she introduced Prince William to the people of Wales too, clutching his Welsh dragon.
Yes, indeed.
So again, a very, very unique feeling here, especially in Llandaff.
Yes, there has been all this week.
Dean, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, there is still uncertainty as to whether Prince William and Prince Harry will follow their mother's coffin through central London today. Jenny Bond, our court correspondent, is with me. What is the thought there, Jenny, this morning?
The thought remains that it's up to the boys and Prince Charles. They haven't yet decided, as far as I know. Certainly they haven't made their plans known. I do know that they've spent the night, the three of them, at St James's Palace, where the Prince has his Queen and the other members of the royal family. The Queen and the Duke have been here at the Palace, where there's been some comings and goings, mostly administrative this morning. I gather that most of the family will come here. The Queen Mother will come from Clarence House here, and they will all leave together to go to Westminster Abbey. And after that, what's going to happen is that Charles, William and Harry will go to Althorpe for the burial, but I understand that no other members of the royal family will go there.
That was, of course, not the intention. The Queen was never planning to go there, but was there some sort of perception that perhaps she may have changed her mind after her public display yesterday?
Well, there have been so many changes of mind throughout the week. I thought personally there might have been a change here, but the palace say that it was always intended that this should be private for the immediate members of the princess's family, i.e. her boys, and Prince Charles, and for the Spencer family. It seemed very much as a Spencer family occasion.
Now, we've spoken a lot, of course, about the princess's life. Now, of course, we must talk about the legacy that she leaves behind. You knew her very well. What do you think that legacy will be?
Well, I think amongst the broader public there will be an increased sense of compassion for the vulnerable and the sick. I think for the royal family there is a sense of humility now, that things cannot go on unquestioningly because they've been that way for decades. They can't be so hidebound in tradition. I think we got the clearest signal of that yesterday from the Queen when she herself said she thought lessons had to be drawn from Diana's life and from this extraordinary reaction to her death. And I think we must conclude from that in some measure the family are going to try and honour Diana's wish that we should have a monarchy that is less aloof and more of the people.
Jenny, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's just have a look at Buckingham Palace as it stands in all its radiant glory this morning. As we say, a peerless blue sky. Crowds still gathering, probably now about a dozen deep in places. The Queen and Prince Philip and Prince Charles behind the walls of Buckingham Palace will be coming back out very shortly now. The funeral procession begins from Kensington Palace, the Princess of Wales' former home, at 9:08, when of course we will bring you full coverage of that procession. Martyn.
Just 3/4 of an hour, as Jill says, to the start of the funeral procession, and the crowds coming into London are beginning to build up. But the police say that because people have been heeding advice and staggering their journeys, the roads are quieter than expected. Many people have also chosen to walk or use public transport. Roads leading into Westminster and Whitehall were shut earlier than expected because of the large numbers of people camped there. Scotland Yard are asking the public to avoid Parliament Square and Whitehall, and have been since 4:30 this morning. Hyde Park Corner too, within the last hour, has become congested. And in the past few minutes, the police have said that the Mall and Horse Guards Parade are also full. But there is still room for onlookers to stand in Queensgate, South Carriage Drive and Constitution Hill. London Transport say the Underground is now very crowded. Crowds building up there, especially on...
think she would have liked that, Amanda.
Well, I think she'd have loved that. Amanda Thompson bringing an end to our coverage this morning of the build-up to today's sad events, the day we'll never forget.
We will say goodbye to you now on this emotional morning as Trevor McDonald continues ITV's coverage of the Princess's funeral.
Good morning on this sad September day as our grieving nation leads the world in saying goodbye to Diana, Princess of Wales, the princess destined never to be queen, but one who transformed her life to become instead a queen of people's hearts, the people's princess. 1 week ago, no one could have possibly imagined the events of the last 7 days, the crash in which the princess died, the mind-numbing disbelief, and then all the controversy about how it actually happened. But nor could anyone have predicted the magnitude of the display of our nation's sorrow, unprecedented and surely unsurpassable. From every part of the country and from every part of the world, people have been arriving here in London for the ceremony. Some political and international leaders are here, of course, but this is not a state funeral. It's not an official funeral. It's an extraordinary mixture of public and private, a unique occasion in our country's history for a unique person. Our coverage here on ITV will continue until 4 o'clock this afternoon to broadcast the procession, the funeral service, the journey of Diana's hearse through North London and its arrival at the Spencer family estate. Our cameras will cover every public aspect of this day. We're at Kensington Palace, Diana's home, from where her coffin will begin its journey in just over half an hour. We're with the crowds on the streets of London, literally millions of them. We'll follow the funeral procession to Westminster Abbey, along the route taken by royal funerals throughout history. And at the gates of Althorpe Park, we'll have the last public glimpse of the coffin before Diana's family say their private farewells. For our broadcast today, I'll be joined by my senior ITN colleagues. John Suchet, supported by our royal correspondent Nicholas Owen, will describe the procession and the service. Dermot Murnaghan will be at Buckingham Palace to report on the atmosphere there. Julia Somerville will be at Westminster Abbey, and she'll speak to guests after the service. And in the studio, two royal authors, Hugo Vickers and Robert Lacey, are here with me to discuss the unfolding events of the day and to talk about their significance. First, as we mentioned, the key vantage points for today's events are thronged with people. Here's John Suchet to describe the scenes.
Quite simply, London has never seen anything like it and probably never will again. These are the pictures from along the processional route. People have been pouring into the centre of London all week and since before dawn, and this is the result. Estimates before today of how many people are on the streets and in the parks range from at least 1 million, possibly as many as 5. We cross to Hyde Park, and these are the scenes there. The south side of Hyde Park, of course, is on the extended route of the funeral procession now that the coffin is leaving from Kensington Palace. And the other change, a modern touch that has drawn the crowds to Hyde Park, is the positioning there of 2 huge screens, so people can be part of the events and yet also watch the service on television. Hyde Park has, of course, been used for big events before. Remember the VE Day anniversary celebrations 2 years ago. Remember, too, Pavarotti in the Park in 1991, when the rain came down on him and the princess. He's due to be at the service today. And Princess Diana was, of course, in the park on that day. We move now to Westminster Abbey, where, as we've seen, people have been queuing for days to get the best view, to be close to their princess, the people's princess. And it's here, in less than an hour, that the great doors of the cathedral will open, and the congregation will start taking their places. Diana's family, the Spencers, The royal family, guests from the worlds of show business and charity work. And hoping for a glimpse, the thousands crammed into the streets around this historic Abbey building.
Still, as John Suchet said, amazing scenes, and we've seen them throughout the week. My guests in the studio this morning are Hugo Vickers and Robert Lacey, and they're watching those pictures with me, watching some of the events unfold this morning. Hugo Vickers, it's extraordinary that in a television age, there are so many people still wanting to be part of the event. They could sit at home and watch it all on TV.
Oh, I think there's a very strong feeling that it's important to see the coffin. It's almost a primeval feeling just to make the tragic events of the past week suddenly become real. That's what people have been saying to me outside in the streets.
Robert Lacey, is that your view?
Yes, I mean, it's sad, but it's also a celebration, and I think it's a defining moment for a new sort of Britain, a new, softer, more compassionate place.
And the extraordinary thing as well is that people have been talking about the nature of the crowds. The humanity of Diana was seen in the boundaries crossed in everywhere, in every case. People of different nationalities, people from all over the world, all wanting to be there to pay their tribute to her.
Yes, you can't define.
You can see the crowds now.
The crowds are not definable as such. I mean, every possible age, every possible country is represented, and there have been long vigils, people queuing for a very long time, but there's been a contentment in the vigil, and if, as occasion is necessary, somebody has to brush through the crowds, they let you pass. They're very, very, as I say, contented and kind crowd.
Most of these people have been here all night, and I was up 1 o'clock this morning in Kensington Gardens. It was an extraordinary scene. People gathered round the trees. It was like, well, Kensington Gardens has Peter Pan's statue there, and it was like Peter Pan's magic forest. Every tree was illuminated with candles. There were messages.
At Canada Gate there now.
That's it, outside the palace. And people were, as Hugo said, gentle and soft, and obviously feeling very personally what was going on.
That's right. We were talking about Diana's humanity, and we were talking about the fact that people were queuing outside the Abbey certainly for 2 or 3 days now.
Yes, I've thought a lot in the past week about what it was that made her unique, and I feel that really what everybody has detected is the fact that she had a very good heart. That was what gave her the natural affinity she had with the sick, with the young, and with the old, and that's what people have detected in her, and that's why I think they feel so very, very strongly towards her.
And there we can see some of the floral tributes at Westminster Abbey, and now across the street there, some of the crowds. Robert Lacey, still amazing scenes as John Suchet was describing.
Yes, she was a soft-hearted person, and she was also a vulnerable person, wasn't she? And I think that's what everybody's responding to as well. She was someone who wasn't afraid to make clear her imperfections and face up to them and try and battle them, and it's that courage.
And that will be reflected. That will be reflected in the funeral service, won't it?
Yes, it will. Stoicism, of course, will be the order of the day in Westminster Abbey, and of course, we've had this controversy this week about the right way to show grief, whether the royal family's traditional way is the right way, whether breaking down and crying in public is the right way, and I think it'll all be resolved today in those crowds and in the Abbey.
But all these people, Hugo, they just want to be part of it, they just want to be there, they want to hear the service, they want to enjoy it, don't they?
Yes, I think there are no rules today. I think however anyone wants to respond to it will be accepted absolutely as natural. I think it will be the most extraordinary thing we've ever seen, probably.
For the time being, Hugo Vickers and Robert Lacey, thank you very much indeed. In among the crowds, every individual, every family, has each its own special reason for wanting to be part of today's remarkable event. The Williams family from the Rhondda Valley in Wales remember the day 15 years ago when the princess met their son Hugh, then just a few days old, in the maternity ward of their local hospital. Norman Rees reports on their journey to London.
We are all God's children here. This is what we pray.
In the Rhondda Valley, they're remembering their princess.
They're all aware that Princess Diana has died. Their opinions vary from
her being a very caring person, a very kind person, a very loving person, who has done a lot of good work throughout the world.
Keith Williams is head teacher at the Wattstown Primary School, and he has a particular reason to remember Diana. His wife Dawn and mother Joan share this special bond. They went together to sign the Book of Remembrance at the village library, and it brought back memories. Memories from 16 years ago, when Diana went to the local maternity unit and met Dawn with Hugh, her newborn baby son.
Some were quite nervous and apprehensive about it, but I must be honest, I enjoyed it, enjoyed the day. And but as soon as she came through the doors, everything seemed so relaxed, and because she just looked and said, "Oh, babies," and we headed to the first bed there, and it was just so nice. It was so pleasant, and she just lit up the room.
From as early as I can remember, really, my parents had told me all through the years that Diana was at the hospital, and I've seen the photos, and I'm glad to have been part of it, of her life. She met me even though I can't remember.
Grandma carries the memories though, packing her bags to come to London for the funeral.
I know what else you can sing, just that I'm sad. But I'm pleased to be going just the same, to pay my respects to everybody. But I am sad.
Like millions of others, the Williams family made today's journey to London, and like everyone else, they knew why they wanted to be here.
I was there at the beginning when she first became Princess of Wales, and it's nice to be there now and to pay your last respects. To see the end of the Princess of Wales. Well, it'll never be the end, she'll live forever in people's hearts.
Norman Rees, ITN.
Now, to talk us through the route, its landmarks and its historical significance, here's John Suchet.
This is the timetable. At 9:08, the procession will leave the grounds of Kensington Palace, the princess's London home since her marriage in 1981, first with her husband and later alone, after the couple separated. It travels along the edge of Hyde Park, passing the Royal Albert Hall to the right. The coffin leaves the park through Apsley Gate next to Apsley House, the London home of the Duke of Wellington, then crosses Hyde Park Corner under Wellington Arch, which is never opened to traffic. Next, the procession approaches Buckingham Palace, the home of the sovereigns since Queen Victoria moved there in 1837. It passes the Queen Victoria Memorial and into the Mall. And it was down this great processional avenue in 1981 that the Princess and Prince Charles left Buckingham Palace in the evening of their wedding day as they headed towards Waterloo Station for their honeymoon at Broadlands in Hampshire. From here, the cortege will follow a long-established royal processional route, little changed for over 3 centuries, a route that the sovereign has taken for all important ceremonial occasions. Further down on the left, the grounds of St James's Palace, Prince Charles's London home, the sovereign's residence before Buckingham Palace. At the junction with Marlborough Road, on the left, tradition and the unique nature of the princess's funeral will blend as 500 members of her favourite charities join the procession. It moves then towards Horse Guards Parade. Along with other members of the royal family, the princess would watch the annual ceremony of trooping the colour from the large window above Horse Guards Arch. The procession passes under that arch, the archway of the old Admiralty building, and turns into Whitehall, passing Inigo Jones's banqueting house. Then there are the government buildings, the Cabinet Office, Downing Street and the Foreign Office, and on towards the Cenotaph. It then passes Big Ben, Westminster Hall and the Houses of Parliament. The procession crosses Parliament Square before reaching the great west door of Westminster Abbey.
One of the abiding images of this week of national mourning has been the flowers placed in memory of the princess. A solitary stem, an elaborate bouquet, all laid with sorrow and with reverence. The first arrived in a trickle at the royal palaces and around the country before dawn on Sunday. And since then, more than 1 million of them have transformed the entrances to the royal palace into fluorescent seas of colour. And with each one has come a special message, a special thought, a special declaration of love and respect. We ask some of those who left the flowers to read their messages too.
In fondest memory of Diana, may William carry on your grace for your nation and the world. With our love, the McKissock family and friends.
And Diana, with love and affection, you're in our thoughts and touch our hearts, you're greatly missed. Stephen, Samantha, Mark, James, Deanna, Reg and Carol. Arkham from Essex.
Diana and Doddy, may you find happiness and peace at last. God bless you. You'll be greatly missed.
Princess Diana, thank you for lighting up our lives. You were a very special lady. Your kindness, thoughtfulness and loving nature gave joy to the whole world. We are really pretty certain that we will love your boys as much as we loved you. Rest in peace, and we know that you and Dodie are together. God bless you.
It's very simply written, Diana, to a very special lady. All our love, Jonathan, Sue and Oliver. We're from Kidderminster.
Diana, thanks for your love and compassion, which has given hope to so many you love and live for. From the Browns family, I'm from Harrow.
To Diana and Doddy, our princess, our precious princess, touched the hearts of millions with her healing hands. Her beauty and kindness brought happiness to even more. It's comforting to know you had both found love with each other. You'll be remembered always. Good night, God bless, sweet dreams.
ITN has reporters right along the routes. The coffin will follow from Kensington Palace to Althorp. Let's sample a little of the atmosphere now and the emotion there, starting at Kensington Palace. James Mates is there. James, give us a sense of the atmosphere there.
Well, there are thousands of people here. This is obviously a popular vantage point. This is where the Princess of Wales's body has spent a last peaceful night, surrounded by 1,000 candles. The view this morning was of flames. This is in the early hours before dawn, with the flames flickering right the way across Kensington Gardens. Every tree was surrounded by flowers, by candles, by people, some sleeping, some sitting and contemplating, some praying.
And of course, James, around you, the crowds who will watch the